Hey everybody, today is Wednesday, May 14th. No, do not adjust your set. I do not have a beard, and that's because the Line Network raised, I think it's $96,000 and climbing for recovering from religion. And I said if we got to 75,000, that I would not just cut off the beard, but leave the mustache, which I despise. And I'm embarrassed it's making a comeback seemingly in general culture. And that I would keep this shaved for 1 month while letting the mustache grow. Who knows what's going to happen on June 11th? One of two things is going to happen. I'm either going to completely shave off the mustache and then we'll see me barefaced and watch it grow back in, or I will just keep the mustache and stop shaving and then we'll get a beard back in a week or two. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is we raised a bunch of money thanks to you. Thanks to all of you for tuning in, for contributing, for playing the fun games with us, for, hey, we're going to do a spam the thing and pass the mic and all the crazy stuff that we did that was fun and helped raise money for an incredible organization. Couldn't be happier. Thank you guys so much. As such, we're still going to read. Oh, I didn't tell Arden this. I mean, we're still going to do super chats tonight, like always. But I was thinking maybe we set it at a $5 threshold as a thank you. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, then let's do it. Here we go. Here's the brief news that I've been focused on for the past, week or so. President Trump is getting a $400 million Sky Palace to use as Air Force One. And then when he leaves office, the plan is for it to transition to the Trump Presidential Library, which means it just becomes his to use, wherever he wants. And while everybody else initially seemed to think, ooh, this is, a conflict. I mean, Hillary, when she was Secretary of State, couldn't even keep a necklace that was worth $500. I mean, the rest of us gotta do what we can to say, hey, make sure that we're not having any impropriety, that there's no hint of something being wrong. But, Pam Bondi says there's no problem at all with Trump going ahead and accepting this $400 million plane. And we can completely trust her because she used to be paid by Qatar, the country giving Trump the plane. And the fact that Trump's sons and the Trump business just inked a $5.5 billion deal to build a golf course in Qatar isn't related to this at all. Oh, and the fact that Qatar just also made a deal to buy the most American-made Boeing planes ever also isn't related to this. You shouldn't think that at all. I mean, after all, I listened to his minister of propaganda. I mean, his press secretary explained to us that Trump gave up a life of opulence and is here as a public servant. And it is preposterous for any of us to think that he's enriching himself or his friends, no matter what all of the evidence points to, no matter how much his portfolio has risen, no matter how much he keeps giving tax breaks and deals to billionaires while cutting Medicaid and other things, no matter how much money he and his friends make, just a coincidence. And prices aren't going to come down day one. It's going to be more difficult. He's not solved Ukraine. He's not solved Gaza. But you know what? He did cut a deal for a golf course. And I don't even know if there's going to be tariffs on this deal related to Qatar and the Boeing planes. It's just amazing the art of the deal and how it continues to benefit the billionaires and does absolutely nothing for any of the rest of us except make our lives worse. They don't even hide the corruption anymore. They don't even make an attempt to hide the corruption anymore. In the first term, I think they were testing to see just how stupid American citizens are, and now they know. They can do anything. People will vote against their own best interest. They will praise the cult leader, dear leader, extreme, right up until they fall in the grave. They can whine and cry when they lose their business, but it's all for the best. Republicans don't stand up for the rule of law. They don't stand up for due process. They're making exceptions to their tariffs for countries that sponsor terrorism. And they're making exception to their immigration policy for white South Africans. But it has nothing to do with, their skin color or anything. Yeah. We're picking up random brown people and shipping them off to El Salvador. Well, white South Africans their racist views didn't work out as well for them in their country, and some of them are seeking asylum here. And you know what? We just can't let white folks suffer. He has set up complete lunatic quacks in charge of Health and Human Services. That's RFK Jr., who then suggested Trump's new nominee for Surgeon General, Casey Means. Casey Means, who has no medical license, advocates setting up ancestor shrines, reconnecting with spirit guides and mushrooms, and talking and praying to trees. Some of you are that haven't been paying attention are like, yeah, no, Matt's just making this all up. Go ahead. When the show's over, go Google. I'm not making any of it up. This is what's actually going on in the United States of America. This is the most cartoonish timeline and the most dangerous one. And I could ramble on about Trump, and we should, and we will, just not probably as much tonight. Because it seems that their strategy for Project 2025 is a shotgun approach of let's throw so much shit at the wall that nobody could ever possibly wipe it clean. Now, my friend and co-host tonight, Paulogia, released an amazing video recently because Rhett McLaughlin from Good Mythical Morning went on to Alex O'Connor's podcast talk show and explained how and why he's an atheist. And what I found really interesting is that his story is similar to my own, not in, the goals of necessarily becoming a minister or anything like that, but, the sorts of things that we discovered that put little chinks in the armor of fictional God and got us thinking about the subject in a different way. And when that came out, there were, I don't know, a dozen or more YouTube apologists who got together in little groups to talk about this because you have to. I mean, it's a big deal. There's a couple people with millions of subscribers having a talk about how he used to be a believer and now he's not. And what does that mean? And they're scrambling around. And what I found amazing, a little amazing, not too amazing, is how many times, well, I remember Mike Jones complained that Rhett wasn't actually steel manning the Christian position. And then Mike Jones went on to, that's Inspiring Philosophy, by the way, went on to strawman Rhett several times, just as Mike did with me on Twitter when I pointed out that Ridvan had pretended to be a skeptic. And then Mike was like, oh, there you go, hashtag no true atheist. And I was like, I never said he wasn't an atheist. I never said anything about a true atheist. I said that he pretended to skepticism. And the point of that was to actually talk about, hey, how can you advocate for a faith-based position while also advocating for skepticism? Because I find those things to be in conflict. I find the notion that you don't have sufficient evidence to warrant the truth of the claim, and yet you believe it anyway as a matter of faith, to be inconsistent with the principles of skepticism. If you don't, that's fine. We can talk about it. By the way, Ridvan is still on the advisory board for Atheist Alliance International, despite the fact that he's a Christian. I found that really weird as well. It wasn't even in my notes. But there's a lot that's going on with related to Project 2025. And this video, Paul went through the apologists' responses, pointed out their hypocrisy, pointed out the strawmans that they presented, many of the fallacies that they were engaged in a way that I think everyone should see. If it weren't for the fact that Jimmy would kick my ass, I would say, let's just pause tonight's show, go watch Paul's thing, and then come back here in an hour and discuss it. But just take a note, look it up. It is well worth it. I listened to the whole thing today. It's one of my favorite videos Paul's done, and Paul's done most of his videos would probably count as my favorites. But to top it all off, Paul also messaged me recently about possible movie tariffs. And it's time we get him in here to talk about all of this, because there's a rumor that John Voight, Angelina Jolie's estranged and strange actor father, may be seeking to do script reviews, and that this tariff thing may be a setup from Project 2025 to do more of like the content verification or correct content stuff that Project 2025 has been encouraging them to do, to remove certain words and don't discuss certain topics. And I'm pretty sure that all of a sudden you're less likely to see mixed race couples and gay couples and all this stuff in movies, because it's very important as those white South Africans move over here that they take up a privileged status and can point to all the things that they don't like alongside all the things that Project 2025 doesn't like. And so tonight, we are going to be taking calls. We'll also go through the super chats later. But I'm going to be taking calls primarily on two subjects. If you want to call in and defend the resurrection of Jesus and or the reliability of the Gospels, you go right to the head of the class, right to the top of the queue. That's number one. Because that was a big issue, the bulk of what this apologetics panic on behalf of Rhett focused on. On the political front, I'd like to know why people think it's okay for Trump to accept this plane, work deals with Qatar, who he previously acknowledged, as does everybody else, they sponsored terrorism. Why it's okay for him to point unscientific lunatics to head up the Health and Human Services and as a Surgeon General, and why white South Africans should have, preferential different treatment from anybody else who's coming to the country. On that note, welcome Paulogia in here. Paul, how are you?
I am all right. I'm so glad to actually, we talk about movies all the time. We actually have a side chat where we just talk about movie stuff. And it's so exciting that these things are going to overlap a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
Should I give the audience, so I don't talk about this a lot, but should I briefly, I'm just going to go ahead. So I don't talk about this a lot, but I did work in the movie industry from 1999 through 2006. I worked for George Lucas in a variety of capacities, working on Star Wars prequels, this Clone Wars TV series, all the Star Wars books, comics, movies, all that kind of stuff, video games. Then after that, I started both a comic book publishing company, and I was working as a visual effects supervisor. So I got to do visual effects for commercials, TVs, films, that kind of thing. And I've been adjacent to the film industry for a long time. Also, another thing I don't talk about is that later this year, hopefully, this movie called Afterburn will be coming out, which is based on a graphic novel that I wrote. And so while I can't talk a ton about that, it is why I was linked to these discussions about President Trump's announcement, because the film that I'm involved with was shot largely overseas. Because when I wrote the story, not every story takes place in the United States, Matt. I don't know if you know that there are stories that happen other places in the world. And so
paying attention to the MCU, not only does it all happen in the United States, it all has to happen in New York.
Yeah, that's right. I know it's very limited. Very limited. So despite the fact that it's mostly American financed, stars Dave Bautista and Samuel L. Jackson, who are both Americans, American director, all that kind of stuff. The question is now hanging over my film: if these tariffs come forward, what will be an American film? Who will pay the tariff, and what will the tariff be? So there's all those things. And I think that was, as you hinted at, I think that became kind of smoke and mirrors for my other things. Because weirdly, if you shoot half of Mission Impossible in Romania, for example,
right?
Who's paying a tariff on what at that point? Is the theater, when you buy the ticket, are you paying extra because some of the movie was shot overseas? Or is Tom Cruise paying extra? Is Paramount paying money? How do you quantify the value of footage that was shot in Romania? And does that just go onto the production budget? There's just all those questions hanging over people, my friends in the visual effects industry, for example. What does it count if the footage was shot in Romania, but we did 3 months of visual effects on it in the States or in Canada or somewhere else? Right. What does that all count? So blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But I think you know,
And how
Matt.
many? No, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. All I was going to say is, I think you know that China has opened up its borders since, and it was right around at the time I was working on the Star Wars prequels. We were among the first to get in there. So China has started allowing American films in, and they actually have a board, and there's only X number of films that are allowed in per year. X is only known to them, and so who knows? You know, they say they met their quota on any given year when they say they've met their quota. But they're allowed X amount of American films are allowed in, and they have to revenue share with the Chinese government, but they also get script review. So if you mentioned one thing, for example, if you have flagrant LGBTQ content, you're just not even going to be eligible. If you say badmouth China. So for example, again, my little project I was working on when I wrote it, one of the things my agent told me was, you've made some of the antagonists Chinese, we can't put that in the film, right? And I think he's like, okay, I guess. Well, they've changed, some of the story so that this could actually potentially play in Chinese markets. All those kind of things. Now, in Trump's announcement about all the tariffs, which were all fuzzy, he said the one sentence that was very scary to me, and that was, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda was in his announcement. It was toward the end, so not everyone picked it up. But I think, and so I started hearing from people who are still in my circles that John Voight had been one of the advisors on all this, and that they kind of wanted to set up a Chinese model where if you wanted to avoid these tariffs, like if Marvel wanted to avoid these tariffs on an upcoming Fantastic Four film, well, then you would be submitting to the American government a copy of the script, a copy of all the call sheets, a copy of all of that kind of stuff, and they would be able to conditionally say, well, because this is what the Chinese government does, well, you need to make this, if you make this edit, you can be allowed in. If you make that edit, you're allowed in. You need to change this topic, or just straight up not. Or potentially here we could be up for tariffs. Your film will someone's going to have to pay twice as much to buy a ticket to your film. But also, if he doesn't like the messaging and the propaganda, that means that foreign films that he doesn't agree with, or that the group doesn't agree with, also may not play. So you could end up, if you liked the movie Parasite, maybe that movie wouldn't play here. Or if you liked other things, and I can't hear you, Matt. So I don't know if you're just quiet, or if we still have.
I am wrapped with
again.
attention to exactly what you're talking about.
Very good. Sorry, this is a bit of I'm on my bit of a ramble, but this all ends with the other part about the China things that apparently they like is that China now has a thing where if instead of waiting to see if you're going to pass the approval process, you can now pre-approve your script with the Chinese government, partner with them. They will become a financial partner in your film, and you will then be guaranteed to be one of the approved films. And apparently this is the model that is potentially being shipped around, or at least discussed as potentially affecting films going forward in America. So the tariff thing might be one thing, but it's a little bit ridiculous. There is a problem. I should preface this, even though I'm Canadian, there absolutely is a problem in LA. Films being made in LA is down like 30-40% over maybe a decade or two ago. Though a lot of that has actually gone to places like Atlanta, to Georgia, yes, to New York, to other places.
Austin.
Austin, yeah. But interestingly, the first sentence in Trump's thing was, other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw our filmmakers and studios away. Well, that is the thing. Filmmakers go where they are drawn. Filmmaking does not come out of penalties. As with so many things, it's a service, right? You don't actually get there by punishing. If you could punish people for not filming in LA, it would just mean fewer films would be made. What you need to do to pair with this is to actually have enticement. So it didn't go in the exact order I was wanting, Matt. But I think I laid the potential issues out on the table.
Yeah.
I can answer only from my tangential. I'm still involved with the film industry, kind of. And I know I don't talk about it a lot, or some people think I do. Did you have any thoughts or questions about how this could affect people on the
Well,
ground?
part of this is about the logistics of what are they going to add tariffs to and how. Because let's say I have a massive library of stock footage that was shot
Yep.
around the world, but it was shot 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Do I have to pay for using that, even though I already have it here? If the film is shot here but edited somewhere else, does that get the tariff? It was shot someone else and edited here, does that get the tariff? If they're going to make it so that it's more expensive, what are they going to do to stop piracy? To stop
There's the other question.
underground movie sharing, underground movie sites? We're going to get a VPN. And how wild would it be if we had to stealth our asses into Chinese
Right?
servers where you wouldn't have free speech at all, really, in order to see a movie because our government is terrified that we might see two dudes kissing? Like Brokeback Mountain is definitely, they would tariff the shit out of that.
Right. Or you think about the movie The Apprentice last year. The movie Apprentice would never get made. Whether you liked it, hated it, didn't see it, doesn't matter. For those who don't know, it was Sebastian Stan.
Yeah.
I always want to say Sebastian Shaw, who was a different actor, Star Wars related. Sebastian Stan was played Donald Trump. Of course, that film, is probably not going to get approved. So, yes, the party of freedom of speech. Weirdly, as you said, whom do you pay? Like, again, you send an assistant director over to Romania and he shoots some B-roll because it's set in Romania. So you shoot some stuff around the airport or whatever. Day of the Jackal recently had some of that kind of stuff. What's the cost? Okay, so you're going to add 100% tariff to what? To that one guy's plane ticket who went over there, to the percentage of the film that it is. Like, the logistics, as you can imagine from the film industry standpoint, are a nightmare because the budgets are already ballooning, but also, razor thin. A lot of these films, they make 5%. Like, it's 5% is their margin of profitability versus never making another one. So, just like anything, these tariffs actually have caused enough unrest that I'm hearing that there are projects being put on hold just because they don't know, right? Like
how do you start shooting something? Yeah. If you think about it, one of my favorite, I don't like to get asked my favorites because it all depends on category and everything. I could probably, Animals is my favorite Pink Floyd album, but outside of that, what's my favorite album or, my favorite band? I couldn't say. I just know that that's my favorite out of Pink Floyd album. I loved the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yep.
The Hobbit, not quite as much, but I thought the Lord of the Rings trilogy was amazing. Is there any hope of something like that being made in the future if this happens? Because that was shot in New Zealand and it would not look right if you shot it in, New Mexico or Montana. New Zealand has, and there's plenty of really distinct places on town. This is why, we've had people show up here. They filmed From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. Literally, I walked through a gate in my fence into a parking lot and went over to craft services and watched them shoot in that parking lot. And then they were shooting some road scenes out there. Austin, there's quite a bit of filmmaking stuff that goes on here, in part because Sandra Bullock lived here and Matthew McConaughey lived here and Mike Judge lived here. And so that brought on all this stuff. And so I remember going out and watching them shoot the From Dusk Till Dawn series right behind us here. That's fine. You can do that. But there are location scouts who are just going to lose their job because who's going to send them out to scout locations somewhere else in the world if it's going to cost them an arm and a leg to shoot there? We have to build our own locations. And the thing is, while there are some, like a lot of those old studio lots are ghost towns now. They don't really use them because the stuff that you would need an old West town for is so rare that it just sits there and gathers dust. I mean, this is where the Manson family holed up. It was already, that was already the case, in the late 60s as well. And now we have not just green screen like I've got behind me, but there's also the monitor surround thing where you're playing footage.
The volume, the volume in the void, yep.
And so if I do everything in the movie right here in Austin, Texas, or let's just go back to Hollywood since they wanted to be Hollywood, I do everything right there in Hollywood, but the computer generated background that I use is clearly built from photographs of, Ireland's
Highlands or something,
or the hexagonal rock layout. I forget what the hell it's called. And I generate that, and it's clearly, and we call it Ireland in the film. Now is there a terraform, even though nothing was we just generated stuff? This is a whole bunch of weird, but the one key to this is not just the logistics of it, but this notion that maybe John Voight or others are lobbying to get script access or script approval on behalf of their incredibly bizarre religious beliefs. Like Angelina Jolie does not talk to her father anymore. They had an on again, off again relationship, but he's a Trumper and a batshit, Project 2025 supporter and everything else. And the last I read, they are currently estranged again. Not that I don't know any of them, and they could make up tomorrow. But I worry that, the Trump administration has already made a list of words that they're scrubbing from government websites. Abortion, accessible, accessibility, activism, activist, advocacy, advocate, advocates, affirming care, equity, equality, equitable, equitableness, ethnicity, immigrants, ideology, identity. These are just words that gender, sex, peanut allergies. They scrubbed the phrase peanut allergies from government websites. That was on their list of potential words. And I'm like, there are things they do that I'm not sure I understand why, other than, hey, what shit can we do to disrupt everything? Like the rumor is right now that the police officer that was convicted of killing George Floyd may be getting pardoned by Trump. Now, the best news I saw about this is that he probably hopes that he doesn't, because he was convicted both federally and in the state of Minnesota. I think so. And so even if Trump pardons the federal aspect of this, he would still be guilty. He would basically have to move from a federal prison to a Minnesota prison. And then it would be up to Tim Walz as to whether or not he also pardons him. And let me just say, I'll bet my left testicle Tim Walz does not pardon this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not particularly fond of either testicle, but I mean, that's how strongly I think it's unlikely that Walz would do that. And yet this reads as if, wow, let's start a race war.
Yeah.
I don't get it. There's nothing. If I was president and I wanted to, there's nothing about this that makes any sense. What could I possibly get? Oh, I really need to appeal to the white hood wearing crowd. I really need to show the racists that this country is going to be white again. So I'm going to let white South Africans in, and I'm going to pardon Mark. Was it Chauvin? I think whatever. I don't get it. There's a plan here being implemented that goes beyond just aspects of Project 2025. And I think that this is terrible to say, and yet I think it's more true than not. Trump is an idiot, and flattery will get you everywhere. Flattery and money will get you everywhere with him. And everybody who tried to oppose him, Little Marco, all these others, they have now bent the knee. They have, basically sacrificed their integrity in order to suck up. And I think it's because they know they will never get to implement any of their ideas or any of their plans if they are in conflict with Trump. So it's better for them to just, yes, sir, and genuflect, and maybe they can get some of their projects done, but they're going to have to just shred every last millimeter of their dignity. And that because rational thinking people and people with integrity are not likely to associate themselves with a Trump, in addition, some absolute lunatics like the My Pillow guy and the conspiracy theorists and the Project 2025 people and all these people here, and they're using that to do this extra crazy stuff of let's make the Surgeon General somebody who prays to trees. Let's make RFK Jr. the head of HHS while he's out bathing in a polluted river, denying germ theory and claiming that we can cure autism and that it's all caused by vaccines and stuff. Or there's nobody at the top. There is Trump, who's going to go with whatever the last person in the room with him said, as long as they suck up sufficiently, which is why when you view the cabinet meetings, oh my gosh, like I'm grossed out at the sheer level of, oh my gosh, sir, since you've taken office, everything has been wonderful and this is the best. And your leadership is really doing this. And I just want to take a minute before I give my status report to thank you for being the leader that we really need and for doing all this stuff and we're making more money. We're getting rid of these terrible immigrants that are destroying our country. You, sir, are perfect and everybody else sucks. That's not too far removed from things I literally heard during the cabinet meeting from people who previously said that he was a threat to the country and they couldn't stand him and that he was Russia's bitch, or now he's Qatar's bitch, and now he's Saudi Arabia's bitch, and yet they're all his bitches. So what are you going to do?
Even our Canadian Prime Minister was adept. I don't know if you saw that meeting between he and Trump, or the press conference with he and Trump, but he started off with, "Hey, Trump, I sure appreciate how you've really rejuvenated how everyone else in the world is thinking about trade. You've done a really good job. The whole world is thinking about their trade differently now because of you." It's like,
yeah,
the most backhanded compliment. I loved it, but he soaked it up.
It's like, oh, what do you want from Canada? Just friendship.
Just friendship.
Yeah. And maybe let them become the 51st state. Never say never.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your prime minister, never. No, it's never.
Yeah.
Definitely a never.
We're not that into you. We're just friends. Yeah.
So we've got some calls queued up, and I want to get to them here in a minute. I do want to touch on one other thing, and that was, I'm probably going to do, you've inspired me to do a couple of videos on this subject, not mirroring your content, but some subtle things that I think, one thing I think you kind of overlooked, but I'm going to say that for a video. But also, those apologists, when they saw the video footage of Rhett sitting there having a conversation with Alex, the number of times they strawmanned him to make it look like, oh, he's just saying evolution, real Christian, stupid. No, I mean, he was eloquent. He was better read than, I don't know, some of the co-hosts, than most of the co-hosts on the channel. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, is it, so there were, what I found was funny, which is part of what I'm going to do a video on, is that when these apologists get together, I remember having 4 of them arguing, standing directly in front of me, and giving 4 different justifications for the Bible's take on slavery. All of them had a different view of what it meant, and all of them gave different justifications. And so I basically said, you guys work out what the true Christian response is, come back to me, and I'll take that on, but I'm not going to go head to head with 4 of you attacking 4 different things. That's silly. And yet when I watched the clips that you had from those apologists, there was still some of that, because like Mike was a nice guy when we debated, but he seems way more angry now than he was 2 years ago.
He does seem that way.
Like constantly pissed and irritated. And don't get me wrong, me too.
Yeah, we're both always pissed and irritated, sure.
Yeah. But he's rapidly getting worse and snarkier and engaging in more dishonest kind of straw manning of stuff. He did it to me, but he did it to Rhett. But also, he's like, oh yeah, you read this, but you didn't read this, you didn't read this, you didn't read this, you didn't read this, you didn't read this. And some of them had actually read, and you pointed out that, well, I have read them and I've done videos and rebutting them and everything else. But here's my thing. I've read a lot of those things. For example, you mentioned Allison positively.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Allison. Is it Dale or Dane?
Dale Allison, yeah. Dale C.
Yeah. Positive. What I've read of his stuff, which isn't a lot, probably one of the better, more honest, rational things. I mean, he's acknowledging essentially that if you accept that the supernatural occurs, it's rational to accept the resurrection. And if you don't accept that the supernatural occurs, it's rational to dismiss the resurrection. And so my pushback on Dale would be, okay, what's the justification for accepting that the supernatural occurs? Because that's definitely my roadblock too. I'm not saying the supernatural does not occur. I'm saying I have no reason to believe it does. And all of the claims that, that it does are insufficient. And so if I'm in this rational position and you, Dale, think something different because you accept that the supernatural occurs, what's your justification for the supernatural? I don't know what it is. But when Mike is sitting there saying, oh, you haven't read this, you haven't read this, you haven't read this. Here's a question for Mike. Why isn't the Bible and the guidance of the Holy Spirit enough? Why would I ever need to read what any one of you apologists have written about your exploration of the Gospels? Why is it not let God be true and every man a liar? Why is it that the four Gospels, for whom we don't know the authorship of, we don't know the reliability of, why is it that if they mention something for 3 sentences, all of a sudden I need to go read 3 books from 3 different authors to have the proper, consistent with God's knowledge understanding? Why isn't it just the case that myself, as a sincere, committed Christian, and Paul, as a sincere, committed Christian, and Mike, as a sincere, committed Christian, why is it that we can all read the book, pray, be absolutely diligent, and allow, hey, God, send your Holy Spirit to guide me to understand this, and come up with 3 different understandings? There is an argument against God in the sense of the argument from divine hiddenness has always been my preferred argument against the existence of God. But there's a different version of that called the argument from inconsistent revelation. And that's because there are thousands of people, well, thousands of denominations, maybe almost as many denominations as there are believers, but we don't quite have to go that far. And they're all convinced that they have it right and have heard from God, or they're pretty sure they've got it right and they've heard from God as a feeling, or maybe some of them as actual words. And they're now there to explain what the Bible means. And yet they don't agree. That to me is yet another demonstration, not that Christianity is false, but that there are a variety of different versions of Christianity. And I have no way of telling which, if any of them, are true. Because what Mike tells me about the Gospels, his interpretation of it, not who wrote it or anything else, those are kind of factual assessments we can make from a historical perspective to some extent. But if Mike tells me what he thinks about what the gospel means, and you tell me what you think, and Josh Bowen tells me what he thinks, and Dan McClellan tells me what he thinks, and Greg Bonson tells me what he thinks, and William Lane Craig tells me what he thinks, why would there be any disagreement amongst the sincere believers? And why would it be the case that there would be sincere believers who would agree with my take or your take on parts of it, even though other theists wouldn't, and yet only disagree in part? Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. I have that same objection. My mom wrote me a letter once, and she was like, oh, I wrote back with a whole bunch of, here's all the fallacies, and here's the problem, and your religion's immoral and everything else. And her reply to me was, oh, you're just like me. We're so logical. I had all those same concerns, but Jesus made me understand all of it. Cool. If you understand it, explain it to me. Can't do that. Jesus needs to do it. Well, cool. It is this inconsistent revelation. and watching them circle the wagons and dishonestly, repeatedly, straw man Mr. right all the way up to Craig. Craig sat there and did a God of the Gaps thing. And I don't think you pointed this one out. It was one line where he said, and I can't remember, so apologies if I get this wrong. I don't think it matters. I can't remember if he said secular scholars or skeptical scholars do not have a naturalistic explanation that they accept for the spread of Christianity. Here's the thing, Bill. Those skeptical scholars and those secular scholars, whichever one it is, they also don't have a supernatural explanation for the spread of Christianity. They're saying we don't have enough information to reach a conclusion. You, on the other hand, Bill, are saying they're wrong and we do have enough information to reach a conclusion, which means you've adopted a burden of proof. And you don't get to shit on their intellectual integrity as if they're the ones with the failing. You have to demonstrate that yours is actually justified. I've already done like 50% of the video I was getting ready to do. But, all right. So we got callers. Let's see how this goes. Tarcisius is
hi.
He is from Pennsylvania, pronouns he, him. Welcome to the show. You wanted to talk about morality and where we derive it from. So welcome. You're on with Paul and Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Just really quick, I really enjoyed hearing your guest perspective because I'm tangentially related to the technical aspect of like animation and stuff. So that's pretty interesting to hear.
Cool.
So with regards to morality, I was wondering, in the world, which I would assume that you would think is true, where there is no God, how would you derive morality? From where do you base morality off of?
The same way I would in a universe with a God, because I don't find that a God's character or thoughts, either divine command theory or something similar, are in any way a measure of morality. If we're talking about morality, we're talking about evaluating actions. I don't think thoughts quite as much, but that's a separate subject. But we can at least, I would hope, agree that we are evaluating the consequences of actions with respect to some goal. And for me, the goal that I put on morality, because it makes the most sense and it seems to be most consistent with what we all cared about, is this in the best interest of the welfare of thinking beings? And the possible answers to that are yes, no, and I don't know, or it's positive, it's negative, it's neutral. And so once I have that standard, I can then, without any subjective assessment, it is subjective that we care about that standard. But once we have that standard, if you and I agree, hey, we're looking at the well-being of humans and thinking creatures and stuff like that, we can then start to categorize which things are in our best interest and opposed to that. You know, like running around lopping off everybody's head, probably really standing strongly in opposition to the welfare of humans, not just the ones you're killing, but you're now creating a society where that sort of thing might happen. Just like due process is illegal. Due process is a legal concept. But if you start denying due process to some people, then that ends it for everybody, that sort of thing.
I totally agree, for sure. I would
and you're right.
I would then question why is the flourishing of thinking beings, why is that good?
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that's what I prefer, and that's how I view morality. I already acknowledged that as a foundation is subjective, just like saying that your foundation, I'm not saying you do this, but saying that one's foundation for morality is whatever is consistent with God. Why is that good? There is no objective, this is good. There is, hey, we're going to declare, we're talking about the well-being of humans. If you want to call that morality, and I'm fine with that, I do. That's great. If you want to say that's not what morality is, okay. I still care about the well-being of humans. I may not care about the thing that you call morality, because when I was a Christian, morality was that which was consistent with the mind of God. I no longer care about that. I don't think it's good. And from the standpoint of Christianity, for example, there is nothing in Christianity where it's been demonstrated that this is actually in our best interests. As a matter of fact, Christianity in particular plays up.
Well, I mean,
hang on.
Okay, yeah.
Christianity plays up in particular that this life is like dirty rags, and it's the next life. It's your disposition in the next life that determines the morality of things. That you're not just good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell thing. But I get it. There's doctrines regarding soteriology and what takes to be saved. But generally speaking, this life is where you do the things that determine, including your exercise of your faith and trusting God or whatever else, where you're going to end up. And so what objection could somebody possibly have to, like, for example, my view of secular morality that is solved in any way by appealing to a God? I have yet to find one.
Well, I think like the most base objection would be how can you objectively say that morality is subjective? Because right there you're making an objective statement. And so how can you?
No, I've already acknowledged that this foundation is subjective. It is objectively true that my subjective foundation is well-being. But you've tapped danced yourself in a corner there. You're saying, how can you objectively say that I've picked the right foundation, right? And I'm not.
Okay, then why would it be so wrong for us to go lopping people's heads off? If it's just subjective, why can't our society be one that is?
Because it's in conflict with the well-being of humans, including me.
But you said that is subjective. That itself is a subjective metric.
Okay, Tarcísio, you're. Let me use my normal analogy and see if it makes sense. The rules of chess were invented by human beings. They are not objective parts of the universe. It is a subjective creation, and they are essentially arbitrary. And we have changed the rules of chess. But the rules of chess are what they are. Once we have the rules and we realize that the goal of playing a game of chess is to not lose, we can then make completely objective assessments about a move and whether or not it furthers the goal of not losing or whether it detracts from the goal of not losing. So the assessment of the quality of the move is objective with respect to the goal. And what you're doing is saying, yeah, but what if I don't want to win at chess? Okay, then you don't want to win at chess. That it is subjective to whether or not you care about winning at chess. And there are people out there who don't care about the well-being of thinking beings. I do. I happen to call it morality. And if somebody says, oh, that's not morality, that's just you caring about the well-being of thinking creatures, then I'm going to say, okay, do you care about the well-being of thinking creatures? Because if so, we can have a conversation about that. And if we don't, we might want to have a conversation about why you don't care about your own well-being and the well-being of people around you.
Well, of course I care about the well-being of thinking creatures, but if you're saying that this is merely a subjective thing, that some people will care about it, some people won't, why is it so bad that people do not care about it? Because if people do not care about it and it's just a subjective metric, then why would we impose our beliefs upon them?
Yeah, I already answered that, but also, how does appealing to a God answer your question? Why is it bad for me to not care what a God thinks?
Why is it objectively bad for you to not care what a God thinks?
Correct.
Well, it would be because God would be... Well, ultimately, it's because there must be some objective metric to morality. Otherwise...
No, we've already demonstrated. No, sir, we've already demonstrated that's not the case. I can have a completely arbitrary subjective foundation and still do objective assessments. So if you want to say, I've already acknowledged that well-being is a subjective determination as a foundation, and so is I want to do what God wants. That's also a subjective foundation. What God actually wants, you could make objective assessments to. If you had access to what God wants, I'm not aware that anybody has any access to anything that any God wants. So when you add a God to the situation here, not only do you not even come close to solving the problem that you're objecting to with secular humanism, or my model, but you are further exacerbating the problem, because if you declare that morality is consistent with the mind of God, now you need to show us what is the mind of God. How do you do that?
I don't think I have to show that, because let's take this a little step further. Okay.
No. We can take it a step
okay,
further in a second. I want to make sure we're clear. Do you think that morality is that which is consistent with the mind of God?
I mean, ultimately, yes. There are metrics in the
no,
world.
No, I'm building to something. I'm building to something.
Okay.
I'm building to something that was a yes or no question. If you think that morality is that which is consistent with, please stop. If you think that morality is whatever is consistent with the mind of God, how can we know what is consistent with the mind of God? You think that you don't have to show that. And I'm like, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
No, that's not what I think. So
You literally said that. Tarcissus,
no.
You literally said that when I asked you how we could know the mind of God. You said you didn't think you had to demonstrate that.
No. To continue the discussion in
you say no,
way,
but that's what we heard. So now are you saying? So now are you saying that you can demonstrate what the mind of God is?
Yeah, because the mind of God proliferates.
Please do so. Please demonstrate. Please demonstrate the mind of God, what the mind of God thinks about something.
Sure. Well, we are created in the image and likeness of God, according to Scripture, of course, right? And obviously, you don't necessarily believe
Tarcissus, you don't get to point to Scripture and say it's Scripture. Which Scripture? You talking about the Bhagavad Gita? You talking about the Old Testament, the New Testament? You talking about Scientology? You don't get to just say we are created in the image of God. Why do you keep interrupting? You don't get to say we are created in the image of and likeness of God, according to Scripture, because that's irrelevant. I'm asking you how you can demonstrate the mind of God.
Let's just assume, right?
No,
because
let's just do the thing that you said you could do. You said you could demonstrate to us what God thinks about something. I asked you how. Please do it.
Yeah. Obviously, you can't demonstrate if God doesn't exist. So we're operating on.
Okay, Tarcissus, you've now entered dishonest stage, so I've muted you, and I'm going to get Paul in here because I shouldn't occupy the entire conversation. And you are now at the point where your dishonesty has irritated me. Because now, after saying that you could demonstrate to us what the mind of God is or what God thinks about something, the sentence that just passed your lips was that obviously we couldn't if God doesn't exist. You don't get to put an if in there. We live in a reality where you think a God exists and I don't. You're saying you can demonstrate what the mind of God is, and I'm asking you to do it. So ifs don't come into this. Demonstrate what God thinks about something and how we can know that. That was the question.
Can you repeat that, because the beep cut you off a little bit?
Demonstrate how we can know what God thinks about a moral issue.
Through the creation that he created. And so
you haven't demonstrated. No, you haven't demonstrated that God exists, God created anything, or that there's any creation. Meanwhile, even if a God exists,
you're asking
meanwhile, if God exists and created everything, that is not demonstrating what God thinks about a moral issue. Please try again to answer the question. How do you demonstrate what God thinks about a moral issue?
Well, of course, first I'd have to prove God's existence. That would be a rather lengthy discussion. I assume they were going to talk about morality a lot. So if you would like me to go off...
I'm sorry, I'm going to mute you again because you seem to be completely unwilling to do what you said you're going to do. I do what I say I'm going to do. When I say if we raise $75,000 for charity, I'm shaving my beard off no matter how much I hate it. When I tell Paul, I'm going to have you on the show and we're going to do this, I do what I say I'm going to do. When you asked me to explain my version of secular morality to you, I did. clearly and thoroughly to point out what was subjective and what wouldn't be subjective, what could potentially be objective. You have now claimed repeatedly that you are capable of demonstrating how we can know what God thinks about a moral issue. And yet every time I unmute you to give you the opportunity to do what you said you'd do, you fail. Let's try this again. I'm going to unmute you. I will wait for the beep. And then I will say, Tarcisius, please demonstrate how we can know what God thinks about a moral issue.
Sure thing. Yeah. One, we prove that God exists first. And obviously there's arguments for motion, all of that, right? Now, given that God exists, obviously you might not be convinced by the argument, then we can look to what he created. And what he created has a bunch of rational human beings, and it ultimately follows what you yourself had put a little bit with human flourishing. That's good. Why is it good? Because obviously the things around us are good if a God created them, and if God created them,
okay, we're done.
They are inherently good.
Well,
okay.
I'm gonna back out of this in order to keep from treating you like a chew toy because you have no idea what you're doing. Because you said step one, prove that God exists. Okay, whether God exists or not, even if I agreed that God exists, that would not in any way demonstrate to me what God thinks about any moral issue. Then you said, given that God exists, I'm still fucking talking. I'm sorry that you failed, but we're doing this. Given that God exists, we can then look at what he created. Whether or not a God exists is independent from whether or not a God created anything. And whether or not a God created anything is independent from what God thinks on moral issues. Then you asserted that God created rational human beings, which you haven't demonstrated. But even if a God created rational human beings, that does not in any way lead to your conclusions that we should care about human well-being, human flourishing. None of those things directly follow from God created rational human beings. And if you're going to point to the God of the Bible, there's nothing about the Bible that says anything at all about morality being about this life. So I award you no points. Paul, what would you like to try?
Tarcisius, let's just suppose that God created the universe and that we're going to observe the universe or observe our Earth specifically to find out what objective morality is. How would we avoid the conclusion that God is the god of cockroaches, or the god of tapeworms, or the god of rats, and that what God really wants is for a world where rats and cockroaches and tapeworms have the most food to eat? What would be the differentiation between what you think? Like, how would we not come to that conclusion potentially?
Sure. Yeah. I think that the first and foremost thing is a rational being versus a non-rational being. But also, I would like to turn that question around.
Well, hold on. I don't mean to. I just want you. Why? Yes, I would say that
because why is that not good in your moral framework? Why is it not good for rats to rule the world? Why shouldn't we be looking for the proliferation of rats?
But that's not what we're doing right now. Right now, what you're doing is saying that an impartial observer with no knowledge of anything at all could look at the Earth and determine what God's moral priorities are purely by observing it. Is that not kind of? I don't mean to strawman you if that's not what you said, but is that kind of not what you said? That an impartial observer could look at the Earth and decide what's moral?
Yeah, no, it's still harder than without revelation, and revelation helps. But there is such a thing as like natural law. That is a field of study in philosophy, and that is something that Christians believe, arises because of God's creation.
But other than your preference as other than your preference as a rational being, why should I not imagine that it's the rat god who is delighted that rats exist in most of the Earth, and is indifferent to what humans do because it makes food for rats?
for the same reason that I would assume, believe that a rational thinking human being is above that of a rat or
yes, because
a
I
dog or
am
a
one.
cat.
We're talking because I am one. That's just tribalistic. I thought we were talking about impartial observers here who could identify God's priorities.
Do you see a dog like making multiple languages and crafting tools and all these things?
No, are you on board with me?
There's an objective.
TACIS, are you on board with me that you were trying to say that an impartial observer that wasn't even part of our thing could observe this, or do I have to be human centric to get to the same conclusion you are?
No, you don't have to be human centric because there are things inherent to a human being that aren't found in animalia. Because we are animals to an extent, but if I'm not
already a human, but if I'm not already a human, why do I assume that is preferred by the God?
If you're not human,
like if the observer is not human, if the observer whom you pitched,
I'm assuming
someone could look at the observer.
I'm assuming the observer is a rational thinker, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Presumably.
Well, then, since he belongs to the class of beings that are rational thinkers, he would be included within, like, the higher order, right?
So you're saying that it's obvious to everyone looking at the Earth that what God likes best about any creation is this species that we are, not dolphins, not that he doesn't actually just prefer oxygen molecules or hydrogen molecules.
Of course, I don't. The thing that is most alike to him and the most complex and the rationality and all that.
You're assuming that. Why are you assuming that we are the most? What can an outside observer tell that we are most like God?
Well. Let me. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Can I? Why, in your view, should us humans flourish? Is it just out of selfishness? Is it just because you are tribalistic, or is it because you perceive that you're on a higher order from dogs?
I'm open to answering this question. If you concede that you can't, are you willing to concede now by changing the topic that an outside observer couldn't, just by looking, determine what God's moral priorities are?
No, I'm not willing to see that because, and it's not a change of topic.
Well, then let's stick. Let's stick to that topic.
Okay, sure. I'll continue down your line of questioning. Could you repeat the question?
I guess the question continues to be: why should an outside observer with having never seen Earth before, look at the Earth and say, well, obviously, of all the creatures on this Earth, these upright primates are obviously the one closest to the Creator?
For the same reason, if we visit an alien world and we see these creatures building buildings and conversing with each other and doing whatever, stuff like that. Like, obviously, those are in the realm of rational beings, and those are above the other creatures.
But why is it less plausible that a God just loves rats and that sentient beings happen to be a byproduct of the world where rats flourish? And God doesn't care one lick that humans are sentient. Like, there isn't actually. You're just putting on this that complex or whatever. You're picking a trait that you like, and saying that's the trait. What if God is like, which creature swims the best? I'm the God of swimming, and really what I like is like these are all equally plausible
you're right.
as to an outside observer, are they not?
You're right, but you see, here's the key. It's because of the rationality that the person who's rational can actively choose to do that which pleases and is in line with God's teaching and His word and what He wants.
That doesn't tell us.
And enter into a
Doesn't tell us
relationship with
what
Him.
pleases.
Love.
That doesn't tell us what pleases God. If the rat God
sure.
still is happiest when rats have babies.
Let's say it doesn't tell us, what pleases God, but is a robot that God programs, right? And just does its thing. That's not going to be as pleasing to a God as someone who actively chooses to do what He wants.
That depends. You see, you're assuming God's goals, because I've also been a software developer, and man, a software that does what I asked it to do without questioning anything did at that point please me, the creator, the most. So again, you're making these hypothetical things that make God happy.
No.
When Matt asked you, how can we demonstrate what makes God happy? You can pitch something to me that might make God happy, and I can pitch back something that God might make God happy. And I don't know how we break the tie.
Well, it's both and, right? Because the robot, the unrational animal, and the rational animal, they all make God happy in their own way. But the rational animal has the ability to choose, which makes it that much more of a joyous thing. Because I'm not sure if you have kids, but
so I do have kids. So you say, but again, like, this isn't demonstrating, right? You do understand that you're not demonstrating.
Sure, I think I have to concede
you're arguing
that, but also,
but you're not, like, arguing for something is not the same as demonstrating. Right, like,
you can keep asserting.
But also,
you can keep asserting that you know the mind of God and what God would like and wouldn't like, but you haven't demonstrated any reason for us to consider that you actually do know what would or wouldn't please God, or how anyone could know that. So you skipped the part that I repeatedly kept asking you about, so you could try to buffalo people by continuing to make assertions about what would or wouldn't please God without demonstrating how you can know such a thing. Nice try.
But you fail to consider the alternative, which is you cannot.
No, you jackass! I have not failed to consider the alternative. You have fucking refused to answer the question. Don't you dare pretend that I haven't considered. Don't you dare pretend that I haven't considered the alternative when I'm the one that's fucking lecturing on this. I'm the one that gave you the answer, and you are the one that ducks and dodges bigger than Daffy fucking Duck in trying to actually defend while you want to keep making assertions. Pull me out of the woodwork one more fucking time by saying that I haven't considered it, when this was one of the things that I lectured on the most, and you have done zero fucking work tonight here on Big Boy, other than making assertions. Keep my name out your mouth.
Okay. Can I ask one question?
Not of me.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take one question.
Okay. In the framework without a God, how is the evidence for the proliferation of rational creatures? How is that evidence for that being something which is good any more than the evidence for what God might find good?
So I tend not to like to wander into these things without doing definitions first. So are you willing to go with me? Because when I say something is good, I mean good is a label that I give to the set of things that I prefer. Do you agree? And bad is the label I give to the set of things I don't prefer. Do you? Am I supposed?
That would work.
Are you expecting me to operate differently?
I would accept that definition only if you would be willing to say that rape is only bad because you subjectively think it's bad.
Yeah, I'm willing to say that.
Honest motherfucker. You dishonest motherfucker. You vile, disgusting, dishonest motherfucker. There are no objections to the secular moral system that we're advocating. or that I'm advocating that is in any way solved by appealing to a God. And while I care about human well-being, and that is subjective, it is objectively the case that rape is in opposition to human well-being, and fuck you for suggesting that it's just a matter of opinion. I don't give a shit what you think your God. Shut up!
I was
Shut
saying
up!
that your definition
Shut your
would go that
fucking
way.
mouth! Shut your fucking mouth! You don't get to speak
think
on my
rape is
show
horrible.
ever again.
I don't.
You're now muted, so sit there and lick it up. We acknowledged from the get-go that the foundation is subjective, but not necessarily arbitrary. See, arbitrary would be suggesting that we just pulled it out of our butts, but we didn't. We acknowledge that we don't have anything other than our subjective experience to care about our well-being, but we do, and you do too, so fuck you. If we both care about well-being, then we can evaluate, is opposition to rape, you fucking troll, an objective assessment based on that subjective foundation? Yes, it is. It is objectively bad for humans and society to not oppose that. And you want to pretend that we're somehow on weaker footing because the only reason you seem to be opposed to rape is because you think it's inconsistent with the mind of God. And yet, if you go to something like the Bible, it advocates that if a woman is raped, the punishment for her rapist is to force him to marry her. Is that moral? Is slavery moral? Don't you dare pretend that you have some fucking moral high ground here. We asked you repeatedly to demonstrate what you said you could do, which was show how we can know the mind of God and how we can know that the mind of God is in fact good. Because it's entirely possible that you could demonstrate to us exactly what God thinks about a certain subject, and I could say, fuck God, he's wrong. I don't care what he thinks. That's not moral, because God permits slavery. God allows you to have different sets of rules for slaves in the Bible. If you're not talking about a biblical God, okay, then we can dig in. But I'm pretty sure that we've already established you're advocating for a biblical God. I'm now done lecturing you on your dishonesty, but if Paul wants to continue, I don't get to shut that down.
I have forgotten the question. I didn't enjoy the bait and switch. Did you get out of this conversation what you wanted, TACIS?
I mean, I would have loved to continue just a little bit more if that was okay. But I mean,
it's not okay.
I enjoyed.
It's not okay. You can't do what you said you'd do. You need to go away and come up with a way for you to demonstrate how we can, one, know what God thinks, and two, know that what God thinks is relevant to us and matters and should be used as criteria. Until you can do those two things, I don't want to hear another word from you.
And you should go back and actually listen to the start. I don't know that you were listening when Matt was talking up front, because it seems like you kept asking questions that Matt had already answered. So just in preparation for the next time you call, if you ever call again, maybe listen to the start of this call so that you can, you don't have to agree with what Matt said, but at least you would know what the position is on that, because it seems like you're kind of asking the same questions over and over. So thank you for calling. But we'll chat again in the future, maybe.
Yep. As soon as you can figure out how to do what you said you could do, because I get it. I fully acknowledge, yes, I care about the well-being of human beings. I didn't pull that out of my butt, though. It's in part because I am a human being and because I understand game theory, and that it's in my best interest to support the other humans around me, because I'm not going to come up with a cure for cancer. I couldn't do my own triple bypass heart surgery. I can't invent the medications that I'm taking for the various conditions I have. That's outside my realm of expertise. I'm not the one. I could probably go, I've hunted food and other stuff. I could probably survive for a while in the wild, but I'm older, I'm more fragile, and it's a lot easier for us to work together cooperatively. We know this from objective, actual evidence that cooperation is better than isolation, which is how we built cultures and hospitals and universities. It's how people have benefited from the knowledge of others. When Einstein discovered that E equals MC squared, he didn't hoard it away for himself. I'm the only one who discovered this, which isn't even the case. But when somebody figures out, hey, this drug makes your penis go up. Well, somebody wanted to tell all their friends about that, and then it becomes the drug that we're going to fund, even if we don't fund things that are actually curing diabetes and things like that. In any case, since we know cooperation is effective, if your God is opposed to cooperation, your God is wrong. Your God does not have the best interest of humans in this world as his goal. And if you're talking about the Christian God, I would argue that there is no reasonable version of the Christian God that has your quality of life here as the primary goal. The primary goal is, where does your soul end up for eternity? The Bible specifically talks about this life's like dirty rags, and God's going to put trials and things in your path, and there's going to be all these problems. This world is a fallen world. This world is a fallen creation. It was not even created perfect. It was created good. And then human beings fucked it all up because God, in his infinite wisdom, gave us free will, which we don't actually have in the sense that the Bible talks about. So you've got this stacked group of assertions. Well, in the same way that the plural of anecdote isn't data, you have essentially, and it's unfair because we've already hung up, but I mean, the people who agree with the caller on this are basically saying, oh, of course God would want what's best for us. How the fuck did you determine that? Does Satan want what's best for us too? Does every supernatural being? Oh, I don't think Satan's real. Or, oh, no, how did you determine that God is the good one and Satan is the obvious one? I've been asking that question for almost 20 years. Nobody's come up with any kind of explanation. How do you know? First of all, you have no way of demonstrating that you know what either of them want or that either of them exist. You just make assumptions. How did you tell that God is the good one and Satan is the evil one? And by the way, how could Adam and Eve have done it? When the serpent shows up and says, oh, no. I know that he said on the day that you eat it, you'll die, but you're not going to die. You're going to become like him. And then what happens? Behold, man has become like one of us. So the serpent told the truth. And they didn't die. Even in the story. Well, it didn't mean a literal death. It meant a spiritual death. Back then, they were going to live forever on earth, but God had to take away that fruit of the tree of life so that they couldn't live forever on earth. And then they started to decay. And because everything was, wonderful, that's why these people lived for 969 years, like Methuselah. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's no rational reason to believe any human being ever lived 969 years. And if you think there is, it's up to you to demonstrate how and why you came to that conclusion. Because that is nearly an order of magnitude greater than any documented case of human life.
We actually have a sequel call ready to go.
Do we? Cool. I'm good.
Someone thinks he can do a better job than their last caller.
Oh, I'm going to take this one real quick.
Go for it.
Spike's calling from Canada, wants to defend Trump receiving the plane from Qatar.
Canadians.
Okay. I'm going to mute you, and you're not going to get to speak, but I'm going to read what you wrote. Wants to defend Trump receiving the plane from Qatar. Biden got foreign gifts, including a $20,000 diamond from India to the First Lady and $28,000 in carpets from Afghanistan. President Obama received over $1 million in jewelry and art from Saudi Arabia, plus $220,000 in clocks from Qatar. Yes, you're correct. I didn't review all of them, but I did review the millions in jewelry for Obama, the $20,000 diamond to the First Lady, Jill Biden. And you know how we know those things? Oh, because they have to be, anything over $480 has to be declared. The $20,000 diamond is now staying in the White House as part of the White House East Wing exhibit. She didn't get to keep that. the $1 million in jewelry that was gifted to Obama was also turned over and becomes property of the state. We accept these gifts as the president, state to state, because it would be rude not to. But they don't get to fucking keep them, which is what we're objecting to. And I'm sorry that you're another dumb Canadian that thinks you need to come chime in on what Trump did right, but you don't know the laws in the United States and you don't know what happened, which means you just defeated your own call in the description by not knowing what happened to all those other things. If Qatar had given Trump a plane that was not being turned over to him after he gets out of office, that would be a different category.
Agree.
But you have a flawed sense of reasoning and a flawed understanding of what's actually happening. Now we can move on. Hey, Brady is calling from Utah. Pronouns are he, him. Thinks he can defend theistic moral position better. So cool, Brady. How you doing?
Oh, my bad. I muted because of the last troll. So
Oh, because of the last caller.
There you
Sorry,
go.
Brady.
Now you're
We
good.
had a
Start
technical
over.
problem with the last caller.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you there? Yeah, sorry. We
Hey,
had a
Brady.
technical
Can you hear
problem
me?
with the last caller, but you're no longer muted. So welcome to the show, Brady.
Oh, okay. Hi. Thank you. How are you guys?
Great.
Great. In unison.
All right. Well, something that so just something what the last caller said, or at least what you were
Sure.
saying during the last caller is that how to demonstrate if morality how morality is consistent with the mind and will of God.
Well, what I asked was how they can demonstrate how we can know what God thinks about a moral issue.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, because I think that was kind of just an interesting way of shuffling the words. Because I want to say that morality would be, or I want to say that morality is consistent with the mind and will of God, but that the mind and will of God is consistent with whatever is moral. That would be more. I feel like that would be more of an appropriate way to.
Okay. So, Brady, for clarity, you're saying morality is the mind and will of God. The mind and will of God is consistent with morality. Morality is consistent with the mind and will of God. Those things are the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can we tell? How can we know? How can we know what the mind and will of God is?
By direct and personal revelation from Him.
Okay. If you have direct and personal revelation from God, how does that help me understand what God's will and mind are?
I would say that comes down to a matter of trust. So how do I put this?
Can you speak up a little louder, Brady? You're a little quiet for me.
Yeah, sorry. I take you off speakerphone here.
Oh, much better. Much better.
Awesome. So, yeah, I think that would come down to a matter of trust. And
Who trusts
hang on.
who in this? Yeah.
If the only way we can know is direct personal revelation, then a direct personal revelation for you is by definition no good to any of the rest of us. As Hume pointed out, revelation is first person, and to everybody else it's hearsay. So if God reveals something to you and doesn't reveal it to me, how can I then know what God thinks? Still there?
I think, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it would have to be through faith, and how I would define and understand faith. Faith is very much of an action word. So if they tell you how they did it, if whoever you're depending on for your source, right, tells you how they did it.
No. You said the only
you
way
can-
we can know is personal revelation from God. If God doesn't reveal himself to me, you're saying that I can know by personal revelation for God or by trusting someone who claims they had a personal revelation?
Yes. So I mean,
How do I
I
tell?
would
How do I
I
tell
would
whether or not
argue
somebody
for.
has had a personal revelation, and why won't God just reveal it to me?
I think he would reveal it to you.
He hasn't.
Because I don't, I don't want to. Like you told me about your experience growing up in, in a Baptist church, right? So I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to assume your past, too much of your past.
You don't have to assume
I might have to
anything.
buy it.
I'll answer questions about my past. But
All
the
right.
question I'm asking you is if the only way to know the mind of God is through direct revelation, then I mean the scripture says, "Let God be true and every man a liar," right?
Yeah.
So doesn't that mean that I can't
I would.
trust any man to be truthful?
Yeah. I see what you mean. And the
Not
scriptures
only
also
that,
say.
but if God will reveal something to you and
Uh-huh.
then expect me to trust what he revealed to you, then
Right.
functionally that would be the same as God revealing it to me. So why doesn't God just do that?
Because I think he wants you to ask him.
I have.
I think because I think you have.
Of course.
Okay. When was the last time you asked him?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a long time ago. I haven't believed in many, many years, but I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian, actively working to become a preacher who prayed to God regularly, daily, many times a day, for that his will be done and all this other stuff. But you're
Right.
saying you've said the only way we can know is through personal revelation, and I'm like, if I haven't had a personal revelation, then clearly I cannot be held responsible for moral positions if God hasn't revealed it to me. And then when you were faced with that little loophole, then it was like, oh, well, it's not just personal revelation. You can just have faith that somebody else's personal revelation is right. But are you a Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
No.
Okay, you're not a Catholic. Cool. Do you think that the revelations that the Pope get are true?
I think they're principally true. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't.
So
I
if
haven't.
you have
I
a
haven't looked at
revelation,
all of his revelations.
do you accept evolution?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked much into it to decide.
Oh, well, okay. Do you and the Pope disagree on the morality of any subject?
I don't imagine so.
Really? Okay. Well,
I don't know the Pope's
what
thoughts.
about you and Jehovah's Witnesses? Do you think you disagree with Jehovah's Witnesses on any moral subject?
There might be some things that we disagree on,
Cool.
and there might be some things that we, but right.
Okay.
But continue.
So if you tell me you've got a revelation from God about the moral subject and a Jehovah's Witness says something different and the Pope says something different,
Mm-hmm.
how can I tell which of you three is correct?
You can't. Yeah, it would.
Let me ask another question, because you're right there, Brady. I'm gonna help. You're knocking on the door, and I'm gonna kick it open for you. If you were
I'm
God,
ready for you.
if you were God, and you wanted people
Mhm.
to understand morality, would you privately reveal things to individuals and just leave it up to everybody else to try to figure out who you spoke to and who you didn't?
Yes, but only because I
You
think
would.
it's
So
consensual.
you would set up a system where you ran around privately revealing things to some people but not others, and you think that's a good idea?
No. No,
Well, that's what God's
what I
doing.
mean no, what I mean is that God answers those that are willing to seek him
Okay,
in their
Brady,
in
Brady,
whatever capacity
Brady.
they're able. Yeah.
Let's assume that I have never bothered to seek God. Am I
Yeah.
going to hell?
No.
I'm not.
No.
How do you know?
That you just never bother to seek him?
Yeah, I never sought God. Let's say that's the case. Am I going to hell?
No.
Why not? Does anybody go to hell in your model? How do you know?
No, no. I mean, in my, well, surely, yeah, in my model, like, there are people that go to hell.
Like who? Who goes
But
to hell?
just, anybody who has a full witness of the truth, like a full understanding of God and who he is.
So,
Like if
so
if God was
only
standing right there in front of them, and if God was standing right there in front of him, and it was undeniably, it was undeniable for them, and they denied it anyway, like that would, like that
so
would.
only real. I just want to clarify. Only real Christians are aware of what's moral in your model. Like only saved, true people that are definitely getting into heaven are aware of what's moral.
No, I would. I want to say only Christians are aware of what's moral.
But
It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Why would you? Well, okay. Maybe you could explain that. Elaborate
Well,
on that.
Matt asked how we can know what's
Uh-huh.
moral, and you said only people who've had complete, direct interaction with God or have on faith accepted that someone else did. Only that subset of people
Yeah.
are aware of what God wants. So therefore, only that set of people would be aware of what's moral and what's not moral. Or I'm just exploring. I'm just trying if I'm seeing if I'm steel manning your model here
Yeah.
because that's what it sounds like.
No. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think. Well, we all understand morality, according to our own capacity, and our own knowledge. So
Well, that contradicts then your notion that we need to be aware of God to know what's moral. Or are you saying that people with a little bit of exposure they'll know a little bit about what morality is, and people who know a lot about God, they definitely know?
yes.
Is this a spectrum?
Yeah.
Okay, so why
It's
why
sort of,
would a
it's
Christian
sort of a spectrum.
so
Yeah.
if why would a Christian ever tell another Christian about God in this scenario, or tell a non-believer about God in this scenario when when ignorance is apparently bliss, and if you don't know
Mhm.
anything about God, then you have zero moral culpability, and will be able to get into heaven.
Well, maybe I'll
Aren't you?
clarify for.
Aren't you damning
Go
people
ahead.
just by calling in? You're damning me and Matt because you're telling us about God, and now we know, and now we're going to get judged.
No, I think because I know that God doesn't condemn people for
How do you know
either
that?
lack of understanding or at least I'm very confident.
Okay,
I
why are
mean,
you
I
confident?
think, well, only because I just don't think that's principally true. But I I do feel like I need to fix my argument because I do believe that in my own experience I found that personal and direct revelation is necessary to know God,
How do
to
you
have
know
your
that
own witness.
how do you know that you've had personal and direct revelation from God?
Well, I know for
How?
myself
How?
because of just the personal experiences that I've had.
Has anyone in the
So
history of the world, has anyone in the history of the world thought they had a revelation from God, but they were wrong about that?
yeah, I think there have been times when when I thought I had a revelation, but I was wrong about it.
Well, let's
How you tell the difference
stick to
between those and the ones that
yeah.
are true?
How do you know?
Well, for me, like it was for me each of the experiences that I've had were very profound and um I I mean I don't think I want to go into that right now. I don't think that's
Well,
really
is it
necessary.
possible?
Well, I mean,
Well,
unless you would want to
I'm
go
just
ahead.
saying, why does the profundity of something demonstrate that it's from God?
I don't think it's a profound. I don't think it's profundity. It's
Well, you just said that.
for me.
When we asked you
It was.
how you knew, the only
It's not
thing,
purely based.
the only meat that you gave any attempt to give us on the how you knew
Mm-hmm.
was its profundity. And so that's why I asked about
Mm-hmm.
it.
No, I understand. It's not purely based upon the profanity. I'm working on writing out my testimony now, and so I'm in the middle of um um fleshing out that story just as best I can according to my own experience. Um
So we don't actually want to hear your story, Brady. What
no,
we're
that's
looking
fine.
for is the reason why we can tell that anyone can tell, and you yourself can tell the difference between what you experienced and what presumably thousands or millions of other people who thought they've experienced had expressions from God who were wrong about that.
Right.
Every single Mormon, for example, they feel they have to feel the burning of the bosom, right? They have to have this the feeling that for them authenticates their knowledge. And every single one of them says
Yeah.
they had that feeling. And I'm guessing at least some said really did have the feeling. And they were super sure, as sure as possible. And you're
Yeah.
super sure as possible. But people who are the maximum surety can't all be correct. So what is the reason why you are not potentially self-deluded, just as other people are self-deluded?
I know I'm not self-deluded, and
How?
okay,
How?
and I will clarify. Like, I am also a Mormon,
Okay.
and I have received that witness.
Okay, great.
But I know of myself because it was like it was the most amount of clarity I had gotten on this answer, and that that the Book of Mormon
is it possible that 100% clarity is still not divine? That you can have 100% clarity on something and it still not actually be from God?
I suppose. Would you have any examples of that?
So anyone who's had an epiphany. So, Einstein, had a little epiphany about, the nature of the relationship between matter and energy. And he did some experimentation and had some clarity there. But it doesn't even matter. You can be very clear about something that you might become, hey, I'm super clear. Hey, I became super clear that some decisions in my life were the right decision. Go ahead, Matt.
Right.
No, he said, why could that not, or you getting ready to say, why could that not be from God?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
we're not saying it can't be from God. We're saying, how do you show which one is from God? Is my post-nut clarity from God?
No. No.
So is
actually,
some clarity from God and some not?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I see what you mean.
But once again, we're back to, how do we tell the difference?
Well, well, okay. Oh, I'm first going to apologize for what I said earlier, because I don't think it's. I mean, I think partly it's a matter of trust, but I don't think it's purely based on that. But I do believe that it's purely based on personal revelation, between you and God, between the individual and God.
What's it in this sentence?
I'm sorry?
You said it is a matter of clarity. It is a matter of clarity. By it, do you mean moral knowledge? By it, do you mean salvation? By it, what's it in this sentence that requires revelation from God?
Yeah. Morality, or just to know God, know who God is. You need direct revelation from Him.
You understand that those are different things, right?
You can certainly receive answers about morality from God, but yes, I do understand those are different things.
Okay. So, are you backing off that you need to know God in order to understand what's moral?
No.
Okay. So as far as you're concerned, most of the population has never had a true, proper experience with the God that you worship. And so most of humanity has been unaware of morality.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get you. I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I'm just trying to clarify what you're thinking.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. We're just trying to talk it out, I suppose. No, I mean, it does help to know God, but
How can we know that?
Like, it's not.
I mean, you keep telling us what that, hey, you got to know God and it helps to know God and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I haven't even dug in on the fact that you're a Mormon, which, let's be honest, is the second most ridiculous religion in modern times. And all of the available evidence points to the Book of Mormon being a 19th century invented fiction, which even other Mormons acknowledge. But that doesn't demonstrate that Mormonism isn't true. If you've got direct revelation from a God, how do you personally determine when it's a revelation from God and when you thought it was a revelation from God, but it wasn't?
Because they're not my own thoughts.
How did you determine that? I've never had a thought that wasn't my own thought.
When I don't know. I mean, when I received my answer to the scriptures being true, I prayed for a long time whether the Book of Mormon was true. I took upon that promise. I took upon that challenge to
Is
pray if the
Reformed
scriptures are
Egyptian a
true or
real
not.
language?
What's that?
Is Reformed Egyptian a real language?
I imagine so.
Well, you can imagine all day, but some of us give a shit about reality. And so in reality, Reformed Egyptian, which is what Joseph Smith claimed he was interpreting, is not a real language. It does not exist. It's not part of the lexicon. It's not part of history. It is something that all the evidence suggests he invented. And so you prayed for God to reveal to you whether the Book of Mormon was true. And you're convinced that God told you it is true, when the Book of Mormon is one of the most obviously false books, and with a story of what Joseph Smith interpreting with a seer stone and a hat and then rewriting all of it again a second time after it got lost. It is the most ridiculous story from a convicted con artist making claims about things like languages that we know are not true. So why would God set up a scenario? Hang on. Why would God set up a scenario where you are told by God that a book which is obviously an invented fiction is true?
I feel like you're getting a lot of that from you're not getting I don't know. Are you getting a lot of that from your
I'm getting
Baptist?
it from Dan McClellan, who's a Bible scholar and a Mormon, that all of the available evidence suggests that the Book of Mormon is a 19th century fiction. I don't understand how he can buy into it either. It's evidently a faith-based position. It's not about his scholarship at all, but I don't understand how he and Mark Rober and Clint from Clint Reptiles and all these other people can be reasonable, intelligent, educated, educational Mormons who all understand that the book that they're basing this on is a fiction invented by a con artist, and yet they still have faith. I'd love to debate them. I'd love to find out why, but I don't know that. But I'm getting this from Mormons, not from some fictional source. And so when I ask you if Reformed Egyptian is real or not, and you say you imagine it is, I'm going to say you need to go look that up and stop imagining.
Well, I mean, I haven't done any research on language, but one thing that sticks out to me in the first few verses of the scripture of the book is that the book was written in the language after the learning of the Jews. So the record was kept after the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. And we don't have any evidence that there was ever a reformed Egyptian, because in the text, all of those civilizations were wiped out.
Okay, Brady, now you're just making shit up. You are
No,
making
I'm
shit
not.
up that is not. You absolutely are, and I don't know why you're lying about it. You're making shit up, and you are because you didn't know about
Why
this.
am I lying?
Stop talking. I'm sorry that you're a liar when you're cornered, but you're lying now that you're cornered. You said that you imagined Reformed Egyptian was a real language. That is not the case. You have not studied languages. You have not studied these ancient civilizations. And now you just want to pretend that there was an ancient civilization where Reformed Egyptian came from and they were just wiped out. Go prove it and win yourself a Nobel fucking Prize and a Templeton Foundation Prize and all this other stuff, because right now you've been backed into a corner and now you're just making shit up, just like the kid in the Book of Mormon musical. Stop making shit up, Arnold.
I'm not making.
You
anything
literally
up.
just did. You literally just did. You can laugh all you want. You literally just did it. When are you going to tell me that licking frogs is a way to cure AIDS?
Isn't that something RFK said? Is that what you said?
No, it's in the Book of Mormon musical. You should go watch the Book of Mormon musical, because you are Arnold right now, except you are desperate to try to actually save the actual Mormonism religion, which is irredeemable.
Okay, well, I mean, I just don't know why you're upset right now.
Because you're a liar when you're cornered. You made shit up right here.
I have not lied.
You made
I don't
shit.
think I lied.
What civilization was destroyed that had Reformed Egyptian, and how do you know?
I would say the same civilization that came to the Americas and were destroyed in the process. But in the text talks about that.
What text talks about that again? The Book of Mormon?
Yes. But I don't,
yes,
but that's
you don't get to use the Book of Mormon to prove the Book of Mormon. You have to use actual science and history. You are making shit up again, Arnold.
Well, I never said that was a reason for you to believe.
I didn't say it was a reason to believe either. You're the one who claimed that you believe. Stop talking. You're the one who claimed that you imagine there is something called Reformed religion, but you don't know because you didn't study it. And then when cornered, you decided to go back to a Book of Mormon and then invent the story from the Book of Mormon, which is partially there and partially not, that there were civilizations of Reformed. You are using the fucking Book of Mormon to prove the fucking Book of Mormon. How embarrassing.
Well, I just want to make sure we're using the same text. We're referring to the same text.
I would like us to use a text that's actually a science book, a history book, some sort of peer-reviewed stuff, because anything that you're saying that comes from the Book of Mormon is already garbage until such time as you demonstrate it's not.
Okay, well, if you want me to demonstrate it, I'm going to demonstrate it right now.
Cool. Go, Brady. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
You know, I have had... Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm waiting for you to do what you said you were going to do.
Look, I have had very direct and personal experiences with the Spirit. Not with God, but directly, but certainly with the Spirit.
I'm sorry, Brady. Let's assume for the sake of argument that I take you at your word and that you have had personal and direct interaction with the Spirit. How does that prove that Reformed Egyptian was a real language of people who were destroyed?
That doesn't matter, because that's not the point of the story.
It is the point of the fucking story. You're the one that... No. I'm sorry, sir. You said you could demonstrate something. And then you started talking about, look, I've had very direct, revelation with the Spirit. How does your personal direct revelation with the Spirit confirm that Reformed Egyptian is real? It doesn't. I don't know why it's taking you so long to answer these really simple questions. How does your personal, very direct interaction with the Spirit demonstrate that Mormonism is true? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And you have no way of demonstrating that you've had any sort of interaction with any sort of spirit at all. So not only are you just making shit up, but you're asserting stuff that you can't demonstrate, and you think that's going to demonstrate the other stuff that you can't demonstrate. You are confused about what it means to actually demonstrate that something is true, and it seems that you can't tell the difference between fact and fiction.
No, Matt, no. This is not. There's one experience that I've had that I would always go back to, that I can, whenever I'm in doubt. And that was when I received my answer that the scriptures were true. I had prayed for, I think, years and years that the Book of Mormon was true. And and after taking a long break of studying the text, studying the scriptures again, I had been reading it for about a week, and I still was not. I still did not feel that I had received that answer.
Are you just stringing this long as long as you possibly can?
No.
Because you're literally listen to me. Listen. You're saying there's one experience that you keep going back to. You prayed for years. Why would it take years for God to give you an answer?
I don't think I was really looking very hard.
Oh,
before.
So then you weren't sincerely praying for years and years. You were lying about it.
No, I had prayed. No, I had prayed, but I had.
Why wouldn't God tell you right away?
I don't know. I mean,
why would God let you sit around and toil? And by the way, why would you keep toiling? If I pray to God right now, is there any way, Brady, for me to get direct revelation from God right now? What do I have to say, and what needs to be in my heart for God to tell me right now that the Book of Mormon is real?
Well, do you want it to be real?
I don't give a shit if it's real. I want to know the truth. I'm trying to figure out revelation. What I want isn't relevant, which makes it very different from what it seems that you do, because you started with, do you want it to be real? Did you want it to be real? Because as long as you want it to be real, you can make that happen.
No,
and by that I mean convincing yourself. What I want is irrelevant. I want you, Brady, to tell me what I have to do to get God to reveal to me that the Book of Mormon is true.
I think my advice to you and anybody in your position would be to pray, but not to pray with any presuppositions, which is what I did.
So Brady, I do the same. I do the same thing every couple months, Brady, because I don't want to do a self-check. Because like Matt, I want to believe true things and not believe false things. So I actually do what you do. I attempt every couple months to, when I'm walking my dog, to strip myself down and be as humble as possible. And it's now going on almost a decade since I lost my faith, and it still hasn't happened. So God likes you better than he likes me?
Well, you're not praying to the Mormon God.
Well, I'm trying. I guess so. I didn't specifically. Is that my problem? Is I just been going to generically whichever God is out there to answer?
I don't imagine so. I can't. I don't.
Do you think that other people have wanted things to be true, and then do other people want things to be true, and then eventually come to realize that they are true, even if maybe they're not?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But
So do you at least conceptually understand how your experience is not transferable to anyone else?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not.
So calling into a show is rather irrelevant, right? Like none of these are intellectual. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I won't argue that you guys should believe because of my experience, and
I'm not. I wouldn't.
Or at least
I couldn't. You argued that we should believe based on direct revelation, and I've asked you how I can get that direct revelation, and you have so far failed to even attempt to answer that.
I think the ultimate way for you to get that revelation is just through your own conversation with God.
How do I do that?
And, well, you would do it through humility and do it according to your own knowledge, sort of as you would approach anyone else.
I don't approach anyone else who I don't think they exist, or I don't have good reason to think they exist.
Well, then,
I'm just saying that's not a very good analogy. You might need to describe it differently.
Yeah, no, like I didn't believe that he exists, and this is my very first initial experience that I had to even jumpstart my, like, any kind of faith that he might have existed at all. And because I didn't think he existed, and I thought, how could I pray to a God that I didn't know exists? But
how did you figure out how to pray to God to get an answer?
Well, for me, prayer has always been like, I've always understood how others prayed around me when I was growing up as a member, but that's not really relevant. That's not extremely relevant to my experience at all. That's not, I didn't.
So here, Brady, just pause for a second. Brady, pause for a second. Take a breath and listen.
Uh-huh.
You wanted to find out if there was a God, and you prayed off and on over years, but you didn't always do it right. At some point, you think you did it right. And now I'm asking you, how can I do it right? And I'm not sure that I have an answer of what I should say, how I should do it. What did you say and do? And why wouldn't that work for me?
I got to be honest. I didn't say and do anything. There's a conversation.
Does God just like you better than me?
No. I think.
Well, you didn't say or do anything. You didn't say or do anything, but God revealed himself to you. And I've been sitting here doing this for longer than you've been alive, begging God, any God, to reveal himself. And he just was like, nope, fuck that guy. But you, Brady, you are the special one.
No, I don't consider myself special. I just
You don't? If God fucking talked to me and not other people, I would definitely think I was special. How can you be selected by God for divine revelation while he's denying it to other people and not think that there's something special about that?
I mean, it was certainly special for me just because I was in, I was in deep need of him at the time.
Why? I don't need a God. I've never, what do I need a God for?
I don't know. I think for the same reason you would need a loving father for. If you had a father that was,
I have a
made
father.
so many sacrifices, right? But if you had,
what sacrifices God
was,
made for me? What sacrifices God made for me? That's what I thought.
No, that's not.
I don't know why these are difficult. You're the one that brought up the fact, if you had a father that had sacrificed for you, my dad did sacrifice for me. My dad worked multiple jobs. I'm incredibly grateful for what he did. Also, my dad actually fucking talked to me and interacted with me. My dad was actually around. That's not true for everybody's dad, but that's the way my dad was. If you're saying God is like my dad, demonstrate that God has ever done anything for me or interacted with me in any way, let alone did something sacrifice. How can a God sacrifice? What can a God sacrifice?
His time, his love, and his care.
Is God everywhere all the time? Is God limited in any way?
Yeah.
Really? So God has limited time?
I would maybe not necessarily limited time, but maybe
If there's a million people praying to God all at the same time, does God hear and understand, and is he capable of answering all million of them at the same time?
yes.
Then let's not pretend that answering my fucking question is a great sacrifice on God's part.
Well, why would you
Name a
consider that a
sacrifice
great
that God
sacrifice?
made for anybody. Was Jesus God?
I feel like,
Was Jesus God?
well, you're talking to a Mormon here, so I think we're all gods.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'm aware of what the delusions are. I'm saying, was Jesus God?
In what sense?
Well, was Jesus killed and was he resurrected?
Yes.
Was that a sacrifice?
Yes.
Really? So if I allow someone, if I start off as God, allow someone to beat me and kill me and stick me in the ground for a day and a half, and then I go back to being a God, what did I sacrifice?
What do you think?
And actually, I was God the whole time, even though I was dead, but
Right. Well, what do you think?
I'm pretty sure that I've sacrificed more than Jesus ever did.
I want to say that. Well,
I would
say
I didn't ask you to say it.
Lot,
I'm fucking saying it. And I can demonstrate what I have sacrificed. I've sacrificed more during this call than anybody can demonstrate Jesus or a God ever sacrificing. Because I don't have unlimited time, and I'm giving you bucket loads of my time.
Yeah. Well, I wish I would have answered this question earlier. And as to pertaining to personal revelation, but I'll end the call now.
Okay. Best of luck. If you come up with better answers or ways to explain this, by all means. If you have a way for me to actually interact with God to get the same confirmation that you do, I want to know. Genuinely, I want to. If it requires me taking off my clothes, stepping out in the backyard, spinning 3 times, and begging God to tell me the Book of Mormon's real, my ass will be naked in the backyard. I'm willing to make sacrifice.
I'm sure that.
Anyway, go ahead. Get some rest, Brady. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. You have a good night.
Cheers. I heard a good doggy. Whew. Oh, Arden, I need the link to Supers again. I guess we can do this. There we go. Ted's calling from Washington. Pronouns are he, him, says, thinks Trump has done a lot to protect free speech. Wow. Like what, Ted? How you doing?
How's it going, guys? So I'll start by saying I don't think Trump has done a lot of. I think he's done a lot of good, but I think he's done bad too. So I don't think that the thing with the PhD student getting deported over writing, I don't think that was cool. But I think when you look at what Biden did, pressuring Meta to censor stuff about the COVID lockdowns and all the damage that did.
Excuse me, Ted.
Yeah.
This is about, you think Trump has done a lot for free speech. You're aware that they're censoring speech on government websites, and they're going after lawyers and getting them to shut down, and people who oppose Trump or don't agree with Trump. All of that's happening. Now, what does that have to do with Trump doing good stuff for free speech? Because if all you're going to do is try to say Biden was worse, I don't give a fuck.
Well, I feel like Trump also has changed the culture so that people aren't pressured to be afraid to speak out against like wokeness and stuff like that. So
gender. Trump has encouraged bigots and ignorant racists to be more vocal while silencing the people who are advocating for DEI and stuff like that. And that is an instantiation of protecting free speech. I'm pretty sure that during the Biden administration, you idiots were free to speak about DEI as much as you wanted, right?
Well, I don't think it's as much about DEI. I think for me, it's more about the gender stuff. I think that
Ted,
gender medical care is dangerous.
Ted.
Yeah.
During the entire Biden administration, was there any law restricting your right to talk about gender and express your opinion?
There was, I mean.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, Ted, because you're dishonest as fuck and you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You and everyone else were free to shit all over the gender ideology that you don't understand and don't agree with constantly, which is exactly why Trump is president now, because you and your idiot cohorts turned trans people who represent less than 1% of the population into a terrifying boogeyman and scapegoat that you could use to blame everything. Oh, no, we're allowed, we'll use their pronouns, but they shouldn't be playing sports, even though the NCAA says, how many trans athletes are there in the entire collegiate thing? Oh, two. And meanwhile, Fox News and all these others are posting lies, headlines about, hey, this trans woman in the London Marathon has agreed to give back her medal after beating 14,000 other women. Meanwhile, the truth of that story is that she placed 6,100 and some odd out of everybody who ran and got a participation medal for her thing. But that's not that for her category in the over 50 thing. That's not what the newspaper ran. The newspaper ran this scare story about how there's a trans woman who beat out 14,000 women for a medal. So when that's what's being published and you guys are spreading the misinformation, don't you dare come to me and suggest that Trump has protected your right to be a bigot and that supports free speech, because you are allowed to be just as much of a bigot under Biden.
Well, I want to say that I'm not against trans people. I only have concerns about the medical interventions because.
Okay, Ted, we're not having this conversation. You can call in the Transatlantic Call-In Show, but I'd highly recommend that you go watch Arden's talk from the American Atheist Convention, because you are already queuing up bullshit talking points, which you are perfectly free to express, but not fucking hear. See, free speech is about what the government can do to stop you from speaking. It has nothing to do with what you'll be allowed to say on my fucking show. I'm not violating your free speech by hanging up on you. And Trump has done more to inhibit, both by law and by coercion, free speech in public by removing language from government websites, by going after lawyers and organizations who oppose him, by suggesting that news organizations should have their credentials revoked for not carrying the party line. You are embarrassingly stupid on this subject, and I'm going to hang up.
And seemingly, potentially going after movie scripts and TV shows as well for what they can say. So, all coming from full circle.
But, hey, I'm glad. Hey, comedy's finally legal again, you fucking Joe Rogan douche nozzle. Even Joe Rogan's starting to realize that he's lied to, because Joe's an idiot. The only difference is that Joe will probably tell you he's an idiot. He keeps bringing people on. Let's smoke a bowl. Let's talk about this stuff. And everybody who comes on is both smarter than him, which is already a problem, but knows the subjects better than him. And since he's a clueless buffoon, they just get to talk unchallenged, which means somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson and somebody like RFK Jr. come off on equal footing on the Joe Rogan show, because there's a chief, the dumbest, the smartest village idiot is there smoking up and interviewing him. There's no way to push back when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. When you don't understand how anything works, every conspiracy theory is reasonable and true. Every potential injustice, every potential limitation of your free speech, all of that. Well, we just couldn't. I'm just opposed to this gender ideology. And by the way, Ted, you just exposed yourself as a liar, and it just took me this long to actually do that, because you called in to say that Trump had done more for free speech, and then you used gender stuff as your criteria for that. And then when I pointed out you could have been just as much of a bigot under Biden, you said your only concern with the trans stuff was medical. Well, medical ain't got nothing to do with free speech, you fucking liar. And you know what is? The medical community, the experts on gender identity, gender studies, and things like that, they honestly evaluate and acknowledge that we don't have a perfect solution yet, and we don't have a perfect understanding either. But what they acknowledge, unlike Dawkins and some other biologists who are misrepresenting biology, is that biology isn't merely XXXY. It isn't merely a simple binary, and you don't get to exclude the outliers when the outliers are what we're actually talking about. And they recognize that gender and sex isn't the same. That gender is a mishmash of biology, sociology, and psychology. And then they take a look at what's fair in sports, and it's up to the sporting organizations to make those decisions. But you get lied to, saying people are running around destroying children's lives by doing surgery on prepubescent blah-blah-blahs and giving them drugs that, they can't get off of, which isn't true for hormone blockers and other stuff. There's a ton of studies, but we don't have enough. And we're talking about a tiny little portion of the population. Meanwhile, women no longer have access to control their own bodies. Free speech is increasingly being limited. The fascist authoritarian regime is doing what it is a matter of time before programs like this will not be seen. The trend will lead to this will go away. How dare you call in and brag about free speech and, well, then it's really only about the gender stuff. You don't even know what you're talking about. Well, how would you know that? You didn't listen to me. Oh, yes, I did. And when you come out with the stupid talking points from the beginning, you're like a creationist saying, well, if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? And I hang up and you're mad because I didn't let you continue. I'm sorry that your foundational premise is bullshit, but it is. In the meantime, we got super chats, so we're going to do them.
Awesome.
Do. All right. I'll do this one because it's easy. $20 from Puggles. Thank you. And then the lovey face thing. Thank you, Puggles.
$4.99 from Dimitri the Wanderer. June 14, attend Pride events and detract from any big boy birthday parades that may be happening that day. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that there's lots of other alternate activities happening that day.
Yeah, I think Austin Pride is like almost always in September, which is stupid because it's still stupid hot here in September. But I'll probably do something on June 14th. Maybe I'll get some of that post-nut clarity and determine that Mormonism's true.
That'd be fun.
$10 from Travis Ashley. Hey, Matt, 30 align with conservative values like Matt Walsh and Dr. Phil. By the way, been watching for a decade. What is your advice to young men who are happy to be young cis white men? I don't have advice for them. Continue being, well, you're not going to stay young. But you probably are, you're going to stay cis and white. My thing is, I have huge buckets of privilege. I'm also disadvantaged and marginalized in a number of different categories, both as an atheist and as the partner of a trans person, as an outspoken lefty. There's a number of ways where I get marginalized, but I still have tons of privilege. And so I feel that I have an obligation to use every single bit of that privilege, every single bit of safety. That's what we're talking about with privilege. It is, I have safety that those other marginalized groups don't. And if I don't make use of as much of my safety as possible to try to act as a shield for others who don't have as much safety, so that they can fortify their position and we can boost them up until we're roughly on an even footing on how much safety we have, I have failed. I have failed as a humanist, and I have failed as a decent human being if I just sit here and soak in comfort in my privilege and not make use of it to try to get rid of it so that there isn't this massive disparity in income, not a massive disparity in privilege, not a massive disparity in rights. That's the best advice I got for you. Use your privilege for others.
500 something from Observation and Thoughts. Hello, Matt. Sir. Hello, Matt, sir. How are you? Lots of love from India. I have never met people like you, sir. You've been doing a marvelous job in this cruel world, and I salute you from the bottom of my heart because telling the truth, it's not an easy job. Thank you.
I would say it is. Thank you. Yes. I would say it is an easy job if what you're doing is what I just talked about. Essentially, it costs me nothing substantial to speak out against things and to speak out in favor of certain things. Whereas other people, it can cost them a lot. I work for me. That's another area of privilege. I work here thanks to you guys. if this gets shut down, I'm probably a Walmart greeter. And I don't think Walmart, well, actually, I wouldn't work for Walmart unless it was the only choice, but I don't think they'd let me welcome people by saying, hi, welcome to Walmart. If you're religious, what's wrong with you? $10 from
God's
Greg
not
Markowski.
real.
Hey, Greg.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the show, boys. Thanks to the show, boys. Thanks to the mods and Arden as well. Absolutely. What are you going to say, Paul?
Nothing. I was just going to pretend I was a Walmart greeter and saying, we have a sale on lawnmowers and God's not real.
Yes.
Off we go. Yeah. All right. We have 50 DKK from Adam Helt. Please use this money to start a fund for Matt to get a cowboy hat. It'll fit the stash. Hashtag Matt is a cowboy. Hashtag Forrest showed feet during fundraiser. Well,
to be fair,
I did not know.
Yeah, he held
you
up
have
two
a
rulers.
cowboy hat.
When I suggested I was going to show feet, I was going to show the socks, but evidently that was a bridge too far as well. I'm going to put one more for you to read, and I'm going to sneak away for half a second here.
Sounds good. $5 from Cursed Chaos, Brents in parentheses, saying hi from titillating xenophobes, Texas. Someone listens to Forrest. I've been reading the anthology Queering Anarchism, and so far it has been thought-provoking. Queering Anarchism, I'm going to assume that's a book. I would have to say that, that queer has always been synonymous in some sense with anarchy. Queering Anarchism. A book addressing an undressing power. Cool.
We don't need to take up a fund. I already have a very nice hat.
Already has. Perfect. You're a true Texan.
No.
Oh, okay.
I live in Austin.
Well, at least you can pretend to be one.
I'm surrounded by Texas, but I'll never surrender. $20 from Chris Albanese. Support for the mustache. Thank you, but I hate the mustache. That was the purpose of doing this. I hate the way it looks. I hate mustache only. I hate the fact that it's making a resurgence. But for the next month, because we raise good money from recovering from religion, this is how I'm going to look. I might just wear the hat the whole time.
May as well. $5 from Michael Kennedy. I wonder how much the lack of empathy plays a part in people needing to believe in a God or religion.
Let's hit that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I lacked empathy while I was a God believer. It was just kind of misdirected, I believe. My empathy was in helping people, helping the Holy Spirit help people free themselves from this terrible world and get to the best afterlife.
But you're aware that there's a book called The Sin of Empathy, right? By Joe Rigney, who's one of the, it's one of the top selling Christian books right now, The Sin of Empathy. And both Frank Turek and Sean McDowell's, their podcast this week were both about how, about toxic empathy and how, they think that too much empathy and their church has too much considering of other people. I mean, that's a real trend right now in the church.
I certainly think that one could work too hard towards a goal that is rooted in empathy because you could ignore the consequences of other things. You could sacrifice your own health and then, begin a short term, long term. But what's their case for where is too much empathy?
For some of them, it's like, well, if you don't turn around and tell them that they're sinners that are going to hell, if you accept too much that they're okay the way they are, if you don't point out their flaws, then you're not being loving. Is the argument that I was hearing this week. But I do want to actually read Sin of Empathy just because it boggles my mind. The Christian that I was wouldn't have accepted any of this.
Yeah, that's weird.
Is this you or me?
Stina says, I'll get it. Do you guys play Aneurysm 4? My husband and I just downloaded it last night. It's such a blast. I've never heard of it. Or maybe it's Aneurysm IV.
I'm more of a board game guy.
I have lots of board games.
I know. I can't wait to. I can't wait
play.
till your country's safe to visit again, so we can come do that. $9.99 from Daniel. Just finished Andor season 2. I don't know what to do with my life. Yeah, I haven't
good thing
finished
you
yet,
didn't
but well, I guess you could watch Rogue One if you haven't. You know, we could rewatch Rogue One after Andor season 2. But I'm hearing nothing but good things. But no one spoil it for me because I haven't quite finished.
I've heard nothing but good things as well, but I didn't watch season 1, and I just barely got started on Severance, and there's like 5 or 6 other shows we're trying to do. And look, I'm gonna just say this: Arden works her ass off for the line every day, all day. Not just when we're on the shows and stuff. All the clips that are going up, the graphics, scheduling stuff. And granted, Morgan produces as well, and there's plenty of other volunteers. But Arden works her ass off. And let me tell you, this fundraiser, that really weighed heavy on her. And I think, first of all, anybody out there who thinks that all of us who got to sit in front of the camera and have fun and everything else, that we were the heroes of that's not the case. We're just goobers talking and trying to do what we can to entertain. That thing went off pretty much without much of a hitch because of the woman down the hall, and everybody in chat should just go ahead, mods, let them spam. Thank yous to Arden for that because it's amazing. I hope to watch Andor sometime, but I have not. $10 from Roland the Closet Goblin. Goblin, not Goblind. That was dumb. It's feeling nice and cozy in the depths of forests, ancient textbooks, and pillows. Wish someone would come over and give me a nice Chipotle burrito with a rat or two added in. I'm not putting rats in a burrito. I don't even know what the heck you're talking about.
But you do have access to rats and burritos.
Correct. I have both tortillas and rodents.
Yeah. $5 from Tim Divini. Matt is going to be in deep shit with the rat god for feeding his chosen ones to the snakes. Repent now. It's true. The rat gods probably aren't happy with Matt.
Yeah. Well, but the snakes love me. And you all know that the snake's God's superior. Because, I mean, what did Moses do when he set down his staff? He didn't create a rodent. He created a serpent.
No. Exactly.
$5 from Woolite Mammoth. That's cool. I like that. Digging the stash, Matt. Well, you should stop because in a month it'll be gone.
$9.99 from Daniel. Could the hosts blow air kisses to Jamnico 6?
He's already got one of my old guitars and really was helpful during the fundraiser. Thrilled about that. $10 from Puggles. Thank you again, Puggles. You didn't have to do it twice and you didn't leave a message. So if you have a message, hit me up.
$5 from Invader Tim. I invite Brady to watch the YouTube video Spiritual Witnesses and recognize how little a personal revelation means to the truth. Okay.
It's one of those things where, you know, I would be fine with the notion that God can reveal himself to me in such a way that it absolutely convinces me, and yet I would not be able to explain to others why I'm convinced. The thing is, I understand epistemology and skepticism enough to know that if that happened and Paul and I were having a conversation, I would be like, Paul, the weirdest thing happened to me last night. I cannot demonstrate to anybody, which is an incredibly frustrating thing, and I don't understand. And I keep asking God why he would do this. And he's not answering that part. But I'm completely convinced that I just experienced God. And yet I'm incredibly frustrated that I cannot demonstrate this to anybody else. And so now I'm doubting my own sanity. But there was something about the quality of the experience that was unlike anything else. And I get that it's a fallacious line of thought, but I just cannot help the fact that I'm currently convinced. You don't hear that from the believers who get personal revelation. You don't hear them say, I know this shouldn't convince anybody, including me, and yet it's overwhelming. And it's because the ones that fundamentally understand this is a terrible argument are guys maybe like Allison and others who are recognizing that there's some foundational presupposition that they use to then justify something. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, Dale's is actually, I have interviewed on my channel. His is entirely in the realm of that personal experience. And he says almost verbatim what you just said. It shouldn't convince everyone, maybe even shouldn't convince me, and yet I am. So that's the intellectual honesty that a lot of people applaud.
Bill Craig has said this before, and kind of did. There was a little bit of a clip close to this in the video that you just released. But Bill doesn't believe because of the Kalam cosmological argument. Bill believes because of the inner witness of the Holy Spirit. And from his perspective, that is what convicted him. And the arguments are the way to rationally warrant what he is already convicted of. And it's the only thing that he can present to people. He can't present his first personal revelation. He realizes it shouldn't convince others. I'm not sure that Bill realizes it shouldn't convince him as a possibility. I haven't heard him address that. But because he knows that it shouldn't convince others, he has to present the things that he will. And he's doing that within the bounds of Christianity because he feels that that is how he assists the Holy Spirit, although why and how the Holy Spirit would need any assistance from anybody is another bizarre thing. But
he calls it intellectual permission.
Yes. It is, hey, let me open the door here by being a person you can relate to so the Holy Spirit can talk to you. Okay, cool. I'm open. Holy Spirit, show up. Whisper to me right now in my head. I will tell everybody exactly what I hear, even if I'm completely delusional, even if it means that you guys fire me from the line, Arden calls the loony bin, they come and cart me away. If God gives me a message, or even if I'm just delusionally convinced that God or the Holy Spirit, or however you want to look at it, gives me a message on the show, I will absolutely reveal it word for word. Why doesn't that happen? Why don't we see atheist, skeptic, humanist engaged in a rational discussion and then go, holy crap, I can't prove it to anybody, but God just told me the Book of Mormon is real. And he told me to say this, peanut butter jelly time. I don't know what it means, but that's what I heard.
Right?
That shit doesn't happen. Oh, I screwed up. I didn't read the one that was up there.
You need to go back. Yep.
$5 from several year overture. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Do you think anti-abortionists act as if babies are being murdered? I feel like I would do much more than pearl clutch if 5-year-olds were being axed. Some yes, some no. I think some actually do act as if babies are being murdered. I don't know that that's universally the case, but
I think the ones who take violent action to try to shut down clinics, I think they're the ones that are behaving as if a genuine murder is taking place. And the rest of them are, it's not that they're being disingenuous. There's a way to spin almost every tenet of Christianity by picking the verses that you want to use and ignoring the ones you don't. And so, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, or all of your leaders are appointed by God, which means that some Christians find themselves in this position of saying, I'm opposed to abortion because I think God's opposed to abortion, but God permits it because he permits us to exercise our free will and engage in sin. And God doesn't change it because it's not time yet for that to happen. And so I will continue to speak what I think is God's truth, but it would be wrong of me to take action like those people who would sincerely think it was murder, because that would be me not following God's plan. Because if God wants me to go take this action, God would make that clear. And right now, the only thing that God has evidently made clear to them is that they need to teach people and preach to people. so that they are without excuse. Kind of like the Mormon who doomed us to hell.
And it is like you can be anti-crime, but also anti-vigilante, right? Like that is you can feel very strongly and not feel like you're within your rights to. I think this is probably what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not within your rights. You're not within your rights to take the law into your own hands, as it were. So.
This is me, I guess. $10 from somewhere something. Anytime Matt quotes my favorite musical, and I'm a public school music teacher, I'm ethically bound to donate some of the pennies I'm barely paid. Hasadiga Ibawai. Amen.
And thank you for your teaching service. $5 from Jesse Clark. While I understand your frustration with Trump, calling him an idiot is an insult to idiots.
It would be, but I don't really give a shit if I insult idiots. They elected him. $5 from Joshua Everett. Thanks to both of you for all you do to remind us all to keep being honest, especially with ourselves. It's very much appreciated. I got into it on Facebook today. Okay, this is some bullshit drama that Arden's going to roll her eyes that I'm even mentioning. So I'm going to do this real quick. Somebody posted a snake for sale in one of the many Facebook groups I'm in where people try to rehome snakes. You can't sell them on Facebook, so everybody speaks in code, and it's like, looking to rehome this, and then you DM, and it's like, I want 320 doll hairs for this, or however they're going to do it.
Right.
Anyway, she listed a snake, 1-year-old female, ivory, het puzzle, het freeway. Anybody out there that knows ball python morse knows how confused that is, because ivory is super yellow belly and freeway is yellow belly asphalt. And so something can't be het freeway if it's homozygous. Anyway, so all I did was say, here's what the genes are. The combination you described isn't possible. And she said, I'm just telling you what I was told. I'm not a ball python morph expert. And I said, then you should probably edit the post so that it says, I'm not sure on the genetics or sex of this animal, but I was told it was this. That was it. Would have been a quick and easy thing. It's also a pretty common scam to take an all-white snake that you get, which is like an ivory, and then claim there are other genes in it in order to bump up the price, because you're not going to be able to see them, so you just have to trust it.
Right.
And so what she did was consistent with scammers. I didn't say she was scamming. I just said, all you got to do is edit the post to say this. She didn't. Instead, she argued back at me. And when I countered again, she still didn't edit it, but she sent me a private message saying, dude, why don't you leave me the hell alone? Do you get some joy out of picking on a young girl on Facebook? I told you I'm not a genetics expert. And I said, all I said was, how did you confirm this? And when you said you didn't know, I said you should probably edit the post to make that clear. I don't give a shit if you're young. I don't give a shit if you're a girl, but this is starting to sound manipulative because you're no longer arguing honestly. And I was like, all you got to do is be honest. I'm not saying you're a scammer. And then she blocked me and or took the post down, but I had saved up screenshots and I'm still a member of the group. So I just posted that who she was and people needed to be on the lookout, because I don't know for sure if it was a scam, but I do know that mommy and daddy should stop letting her buy snakes and sell snakes on the internet.
$20 from Mr. Borikua 10. Paul, your critique of critics of Mr. Laughlin's great chat, Mr. O'Connor, was great and very well constructed. Their talk was very thoughtful, yet apologists weren't happy. Brady, come on, you're so close. Hashtag coffee table. This is very conflicted. You can't praise me and then put hashtag coffee table. This is this is a very conflicted. My dog's upset about it now. Anyway, no, thank you so much, Mr. Borikua. When this is all said and done, feel free to go check that video out.
Yes, I highly recommend it. And I listened to the whole thing at 1x speed. Others might bump it up to 1.5, but Not for all of it. You've got it cut together really good. Where I was like, oh, then they do this, and it's like every time I stopped to take a note, because I was driving down to deliver rodents. Every time I stopped to take a note, I would take the note and then push play again. And then almost every time you would say something along the lines or question the very thing that I had just taken a note on. And I was like, oh man, Paul's fucking killing it.
We're becoming the same person. That's trouble.
Well, it makes me better. So I'm happy. Also, you guys have found out the secret. The whole reason that Paul's opposed to coffee tables is because the word triggers his dog.
Yeah, there she is.
I rest my case. Go ahead. I dare you, theists. Show anything as powerful and supernatural as what the fuck I just did to Paul's dog ever in the history of religion. It couldn't have been more impressive if that dog had picked up the phone and called me and barked at me.
Doesn't hurt there's a deer in the yard, but that's fine.
I did that too.
Yep.
Teeny says, did Jesus really die a virgin? Of course not. He got nailed before his death. Nice.
$5 from Jesse Clark. I once stared into a picture of Jesus and saw a piece of toast. Okay.
I've been that high. 50 from Adam Help. Thank you very much, Adam. Spent several minutes thinking of a clever comment to express how much we all love Arden. I'm not creative, it turns out. Love you, Arden. Hashtag Team Zerba.
I have a sick Zerba design, you guys. It's going to be great. Well, actually, I don't know if we're giving it to everyone. We might only be giving it to Misty Nipples, so maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's really good, so maybe Jimmy will release it. We'll see.
The fundraiser is still going on for a few more days. You just have to go back and click on that. And I'm pretty sure that maybe the moderators can put a link in there, because if we get to 100,000, I think we're getting Zerba for a new logo and all kinds of stuff. So if you think you missed it, you haven't. But thank you, Adam. $10 from Falcon Storm.
Right. Oh,
no,
you and I are not good at this. Is there a link to Arden's speech? There absolutely is. Yes. My child just came out as trans. Excellent, and I'm doing my best to support him. We're in a deep red state with positive representation matters. Indeed, that speech is must. Forget my video. That's the must-watch thing of the year of 2025. Best video of the year. So search that one out.
Yeah, and thank you, Falcon. I know just the phrase, my child just came out as trans and I'm doing my best to support him. There's thousands of people that are going to hear just reading that and start crying because they didn't have parents that did that. And they don't live in a space where they would be comfortable coming out like that. So thank you for being better. Even though at this point, better just means the bare minimum you can do to love your kids. Yeah, it's like, but yeah, thanks so much. Do this one again, Paul, or for me.
All right. $10 from Daniel. Just wanted to thank Paul for his content. It's great stuff and it's entertaining and informative. Thank you, sir. You too, Matt, but I already told you this while you were in Florida.
That's fair. Good to see you.
That's a good consolation. Good consolation for having to be in Florida.
$5 from Monkey at Typewriter. This is why I went out of order. I just need Matt to say, my name is Wilford Brimley, and I have diabetes. Great show as usual. You lads are amazing. Coffee tables are lame. You gay homie.
Thank you, Monkey. $10 from Maud. Is $10 enough for Matt to say? Oh, I'll read it first, then Matt will. Hi, I'm Doug Dimmadome, owner of Dimmadale Dimmadome, while wearing a cowboy hat. Well, we'll see. We'll see if that was enough.
Is this an actual phrase that I'm supposed to recognize?
You don't recognize it's from the Fairly Odd Parents. Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
Is there a particular accent or speech pattern, or should I just have fun
I
with it?
mean, full on like racist ass Southern Texan.
Hi, I'm Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. Burgle, Burgleman, Nurgle, Dimmadome, Burgle. $5 from SJL. Matt, 4 words, mustache and mutton chops. No. No.
Another $5 from Mr. Burika 10. Mr. Dillahunty is looking very dapper in that hat. Nice look on you.
Well, thank you.
Arden, the voice of God. You are the best. Let us have a feast in your honor. And and good job on including the you in the honor. Well done.
Now this one I do get. $10 from Brent J. Do you hanker for a hunk of cheese, Matt? Yes. When I'm slow on the draw and I need something to chaw, I hanker for a hunk of cheese. When my boots when I'm going to a hoedown and my boots kind of slow down, I hanker for a hunk of cheese. I don't remember all the words. I should have looked it up, but cool. Yes. Hi kids. Time for timer. I will do all the dumb voices as long as you guys keep donating.
50 from Adam Helt. Matt, I know who you are, and one day I will look for you. I will find you, and I will hug you, and you will just have to like it. Hashtag JK consent matters. Just kidding. Yes, hug consent is important as well.
Just give me like a half a second's warning, and I'll probably consent. I don't mind hugs. I like hugs.
I'm going to just assume next time I see you that I can hug you without even asking.
Oh, I'll pre-consent. Basically, if you and Shannon didn't hug me, I'd assume I did something wrong. But
yep.
$10 for Maud. There's 10 more for Matt to say. Liberty Mutual. It can help you live a better life. You just asked the Limu Emu.
So if the line fire, this is what I'm learning is if the line does fire you, you've got a whole different side career, just wearing this cowboy hat and saying fun stuff. $5 from Invader Tim. Thank you to Arden for that. Well, I'm not sure what that is, but thank you to Arden just in general. If you mean the fundraiser, yes. If you mean putting up with us, yes.
Yep. $5 from Kate Space. You're awesome, Arden, and Matt and Paul. You're okay too, I guess.
That's
no
the
lie
correct ordering.
detected.
Correct ordering. Tim Diviny says Methuselah had a TARDIS. Ooh, that's a fun fan fiction.
$20 from Kevlar 8. Greetings. Do you believe you have a conscience, and do you believe you can sear it?
I
missed.
Is this supposed to be like a Romans 1:20 that you're suppressing the truth in unrighteousness kind of a thing?
For the invisible things of his nature, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
I'll
tell you this.
Suppose.
I'm convinced that I do have a conscience, and I'm convinced that it is an aspect of my brain, and that it is, we think in patterns, we think in heuristics, and some of them are broken. Some of them are flawed. They're based on bad assumptions or beliefs that we have that aren't true. And I think that the conscience is the function of the brain that Carl Sagan referred to as the baloney detector, or bullshit detector, as some others would say. And that it's particularly good because our bullshit detector, we generally use to detect other people's bullshit, but a conscience is the part that detects our own bullshit. It is, you're lying to yourself, right? You're attempting to deceive. You are involved in a gross rationalization. You say you advocate for this principle of, would the world be better if everybody did what I'm about to do? And yet you just did something knowing that the world would not be better if everybody else did it. I'm an absolute stickler for rules and courtesy and decency out on the road. You fucking change lanes without a signal, or pull in, do so without a signal, or assume that you're the most important person on the road. I have no problem at all getting in front of you and preventing you from getting where you want to go as quickly as you'd like to get there. I won't break the law to do it, but I will definitely show you that you're not as special as you thought. So, yeah, I sometimes act as other people's conscience, and that helps train my conscience to be less of a dick in those situations, I hope.
$5 from Jared Gerbair Fuller. Take pride in shaving off the beard. You did it for a great cause, and if I don't mind saying so myself, I was beyond grateful to be able to donate. Well, we are appreciative of every donation.
I think one of the things that disappointed me the most is, for years, like when I was in the Navy, I could only grow a mustache for, rules reasons.
Right. Yeah.
And when I got out, I grew my beard. And if I completely shaved, I looked like I was 12. Like, even up to, I did it once when I did the show, when I did the Atheist Experience in drag.
Right.
I was much heavier, but, I looked like I was 12. And I wasn't sure what it would look like now, because it's been years since I really cut it down. But I've also lost a lot of weight. I've gone from 270 down to like 195, and hoping it continues. But this little turkey jiggle jaggle thing there, that's normally hidden by my beard, and it's really annoying that it's not hidden right now. It's probably why I hate this the most. All right. $20 from the Nationwide reporting. Thank you, Arden. Amen. Pass the biscuits.
$9.99 from Jason. For Zureth Moonpaw's lost chat. Hashtag Moonpaw Nation. And Paul, it's pronounced Boricua. And roll the fuck out of that R. Boricua. All right.
Boricua.
I'm Canadian. I'm working with what I can.
$5 for Jeremy Cole. Sorry, Paul. Hashtag Team Coffee Table. Hashtag Team Shannon. Hashtag Team Arden. I'm definitely Team Arden. I'm definitely Team Shannon. I'm not convinced that I'm hashtag Team Coffee Table. Paul has mostly got me convinced. Our coffee table down in the living room right now is much emptier than it's ever been.
Ooh, good.
We also got rid of a couch and some other chairs and stuff. I like it as long as we're diligent about not leaving shit there for forever. And then as soon as we do, it's like, yeah, I could see why somebody would want to get rid of a coffee table.
$10.64 from Zureth Moonpaw. This is honor of my dad. He would have been 64 years old today, but he could have used RFR, but it wasn't so. Thank you, Matt, Jimmy, Paul, Jimmy, and all the line. You save lives, help people, and are the best. Well, thank you, Zureth Moonpaw. I'm sorry that, I'm very thankful that many people had RFR. It's always nice to want other people to not have to go through the same struggles that you have to. That's always a weird thing when people are like, I struggled, so everyone should have to. That's a weird attitude.
Right? Well, yeah. I had to pay back all of my student loans, so you should have to pay too. Well, maybe the right thing is you shouldn't have.
Right.
Maybe, it's just like, how would you feel if after Lincoln emancipated the slaves, they turned around and looked at their children and said, nope, I was a slave for 30 years. You go be a slave for 30 years too. If we're doing something that's wrong, the mere fact that you did your due diligence and you did what was required to get through it is laudable. But it doesn't mean that things can't be better for the next generation. God, how bad would it be if we just stagnated and nope, you got to have it just as bad as I did. Nope, I don't care that the Mounjaro, Ozempic, whatever is probably going to be the cure for obesity. I had to work hard and then I had to go pay and get money and have a surgery and. Yeah. Bizarre. $10 from Jillian Cruz. Been listening to you all for the past week. When people use letters and numbers for words, if you're not Prince, stop. And Prince is dead. I'm teasing, obviously. That's a Weird Al reference. Been listening to you all for the past week, and I'm very impressed with your channel. I'm a religious trauma therapist. Awesome. And did my deconstructing work 18 years ago. First one in my entire family. Thank you and Godspeed. Yes. Thank you. And I'm going to assume that if you're not already associated with the Secular Therapy Project and recovering from religion, that you would be interested in going over and, checking it out.
Thank you for your work.
Definitely.
Poor Claire. Hi, poor Claire. Bella is actually saying she is hashtag Team Coffee Table. BW. What's that one? BWTHHYBL. The Bible. And thank you, Arden. I don't remember. I don't know what that one is. I'm sorry. I don't get the lingo.
Arden.
I have no idea what that one is.
But poor Claire's
BWT
friend on my channel, so thank you, poor.
I'm not done until I figure this out.
Oh, okay. This is good television.
Biden was the happiest host, you big loser. There you go.
There you go.
$10 from West the Ruckmanite. Paul, what's your take on why most people do seem to have received all the evidence they need to believe in God? We'd only have to explain why exceptions exist, which is just a theological problem.
Well, in that statistically, most people, 90% of the world, or some number close to that, who've ever existed, believed in a god or gods of some sort. So, clearly most people receive all the evidence they need to believe in God. I believed in God with insufficient evidence because I had all kinds of affirmation and I wasn't actually making evidence-based decision. I was making authority and love, based decisions. So I would reject the premise that they've received all. Well, no, they have received all the evidence they need because they are not trying to make an evidential decision, I guess is my statement.
Their standards of evidence are below what we think they should be.
I'm also told by chat that acronym stood for Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca? Which I guess is a reference to Twilight.
Okay.
And my dog's name is Bella,
I don't know much of anything about Twilight.
Me neither.
Except that when it got popular, I started watching True Blood because that was the adult version of Twilight, and it was really good for a couple seasons. Here we go. Try again.
20 from Mr. Boricua. Money's just for Arden. Please take care of yourself, my lady. You do very important work. Remember to break once in a while. Much love from the drunkest state in the Union. Self-love is very much important. Keep on.
I hope to be in the drunken state someday. It's not anytime soon. That is the final super chat of this thing. Paul, thanks so much. And genuinely.
Sorry, one came in from our big dono. I hadn't got it in yet.
Oh.
And another one came in.
Yeah, I get to do this. $20 from WK Misty Nipples, who's the most awesome. Wait, do I get the Zerba design? Share with all, but I would like one too. Loved all online. Oh, guaranteed.
Yeah.
One, even if nobody else does, you're going to get a Zerba design for sure.
Yep.
Nice.
And huge thank you for all of your help during that fundraiser. Same to all the other people who contributed, but you know what's what, Misty. $5 from Jared Bear Fuller. Just curious, seems that Canada is Michigan's next door neighbor. Would I be able to get a coffee table to Paulogia more efficiently? Not without paying tariffs.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got As long as it's not made of wood, I guess.
All right. Y'all, go watch Arden's talk from American Atheists. It's going to be, honey, are we putting that on my channel this week as well?
Yeah, we can. We were thinking about doing that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right now it's on her channel, which you should all go subscribe to. But we're also going to post it on my channel and link back to it because my channel has got a couple 100,000 subscribers, and that will hopefully direct more stuff, more traffic our way, because we want her to put out more content like that. But also, by all means, don't forget about Paul. I kid you not, this hour-long video on apologists, exceptionally well done. Paul has done a lot of videos where I'm like, damn, I need to watch more of the, because I don't get time to watch everything he does. But every time I watch one, I'm like, oh shit, I should. Oh, I can't wait. And then half the time it gives me ideas for videos of mine. So if you've ever seen a video on my channel and thought, wow, that was really cool, just go over to Paul's channel. You'll find one that's probably as cool, maybe, or better.
Or deficient.
On that note, huge thank you to everybody for tuning in, to everybody who donated and subscribed, everything else. Thanks to the moderators and the call screener and the callers, including the ones that I hung up on and cussed out and did all that other stuff. When you develop your A game, call us back. Except for you. You know who you are. You don't need to call ever again. But go to linemerch.com and go to patreon.com/calltheline to support everything we do here. And don't forget about our Recovering from Religion fundraiser that's still going on. See you later.